we're live. This is Over and Over and Over Again, and this is going to look back on what has been the not 2020-2021 season of ups and mainly downs, but we will dissect it all. There's we've got some guests coming to join us as well. So the other side of this, we'll be looking at the 2020-2021 season. That's quite hard to say, actually. Hello, good evening. This is Over and Over Again. The season might be finished, but we're not quite finished with it yet. We're going to look back on the last 9-10 months or so that we've suffered, along with all you guys as well with the Arsenal this season. It hasn't been our greatest season ever, has it? Let's be honest. But it has still been lots to talk about. Lots happened, from right the way back in August when it all started. So we're going to look through it all tonight, and we're also going to dish out a few awards, end of season awards, of course, to the people that deserve them, both good and bad, because that's been the nature of the season, unfortunately. Anyway, obviously I'm not going to do it all on my own. I need guests to help me along, join me along, and they're all guests that I've been on the channel a few times through the season. I've been on some of their channels as well, so it's good to have the guys in to talk about the season. First of all, he's back again. It is Dawsey, of course. How you doing, mate? You all right?
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Very well, very well. Always a pleasure to have you on. I'm sure this is going to be fun, looking back on the last season, which was such a good time we had throughout. But anyway, there's been
positive bits to pick out, but mainly negative. But it's good to get it all off our chests, and we can look forward to the Euros, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And put this behind us. That's what this is all about. Looking back and drawing a line under it, and then we can all move forward to like you said, to the summer, the Euros, and hopefully better things ahead for Arsenal. Also joining us tonight as well. Again, he's been on before. It's Dave from the Out and Out Gunners podcast. You all right, Dave? How you doing?
Good, lads. How are you? Looking forward to it now, just to, as we say, get the season over us and look forward on. And then, unfortunately, I don't have the Euros to look forward to us, so I'll just be watching on again. But look, after this season, I don't think I want too many bad more results. But I think I might adapt Scotland for the Euros, just to throw a spanner in the works there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Kieran Tierney's playing, so that's one way. That's one good thing to get behind him, I suppose. But we'll see what happens. You can always support England as well if you wanted to. We don't mind, honestly. We would let you, but I understand.
Rich.
Yeah, exactly. But also as well, we've got one more guest joining us on the panel. Fantastic channel he's got as well. It's Scott, of course, from the Red Cannon. How you doing, Scott? You all right?
Yeah, good guy. Good, thank you. Hope you're all doing all right, guys. I'm excited.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
looking to reminisce about all these great moments this season. I mean, I've got a list as long as me.
Yeah, well, the good thing is, if we was going to focus on the good things about the season, the show will last about 10 minutes. So it won't take very long to get through them, will it? And then we can look at the rest of it after. But I mean, I wanted to kind of try to have some sort of plan rather than just going through the whole season in one. So I was going to sort of break it down, maybe starting off with perhaps looking at the main chunk of the season, which is the main thing that we're all focused on, which is this. So, yeah, the Premier League, then obviously we finished 8th in the end, the same as last season, which, looking at the statistics and the numbers, I guess, we did get more points. We did concede less goals. We scored exactly the same number of goals, actually, and lost more games. So it's not too easy to really come to any conclusions about whether or not we've improved on last season or the season before or not really. For me, the league season kind of had maybe 4 different aspects to it. We didn't start too bad. 3 wins in the first 4. We were 4th at that point, and maybe we think, we're not playing that well, but things might be good. But then we had that terrible run, didn't we? 1 win in 10, dropped out to 15th, and things were not looking particularly good. We then had a resurgence, didn't we, after Christmas with the introduction of Emile Smith Rowe to the team. We did. We went 7 unbeaten in the Premier League, won 5 and drew 2. But then we went back into a similar mode as before. We didn't have to run three wins in 10 games. And then, obviously, we have finished pretty well with 5 wins in a row and, 1 defeat in the last 7. So, it's been a bit up and down. We spent most of the season between sort of 10th and 12th place, really, majority of it. And in the end, we finished 8th, which was maybe a little bit higher than maybe overall we perhaps should have been. I mean, I don't know what you guys think. I mean, Dawes, if we start with you, what have you made of the Premier League season as a whole? You think we've improved on the season before, or do you think it's pretty been much of a muchness, really?
I think overall it's been pretty much of a muchness, if I'm being completely honest. I think the highlights really are some of the bigger games that you look at. We've picked up some decent results against the top 6 teams, which maybe we haven't done for quite some time. So probably when you're looking at highlights of the Premier League season, they're going to be some of the things that we're probably going to discuss. Really, some of the better results we've had against Chelsea, United. Obviously, we beat Spurs as well, which was always enjoyable. So I think you summed it up pretty well. It did feel like there was 2 seasons before Christmas and after Christmas. That run from kind of October onwards to Christmas really did kill us completely. There was no coming back from that, really. What caused that? I guess that's kind of what's hard to put your finger on, really, because since Christmas we've looked all right, and seen it plenty on social media, that the table kind of since Christmas, and you're looking with I think 2nd or 3rd best team in the league since Christmas. So there's obviously something there which leads to more frustration for me, knowing that actually we can do all right and we can put together a fairly decent run of results. But yeah, overall, a really, really frustrating season. I still haven't quite figured out whether we've dodged a bullet not finishing 7th or not, really. It would have been, obviously, it would have been nice finishing above Spurs, but that Conference League, the more I look into it, I can't imagine you're going to bear a lot of fruition financially from being in that competition, really. So weighing it up, I think actually I'm leading more towards being happy that we finished 8th instead of nicking that 7th place, if I'm being honest. But yeah, very frustrating season in the Premier League. Not much improvement, if I'm being honest. Just in the bigger games, I think we've shown a bit more and picked up some decent results. But there's obviously a lot of reasons behind that. The lack of pre-season, the 2 seasons kind of one after the other. So that's obviously going to have some kind of impact. But yeah, for me, just glad that the Premier League season's done, if I'm being honest.
No, I think we all are. It's the point about that, though. You're saying sort of before Christmas and after Christmas, and certainly maybe in the Premier League there were improvements. But actually, over the whole season, before Christmas, we played 27 matches from the start of the season till Christmas. We lost 9. After Christmas, we played 33 matches and lost 9 as well. So actually, we lost as many games before as we did after, because I think the Europa League group stage, which we'll come on to, maybe altered the results a little bit before Christmas, because we kind of won all those games, didn't we? Whereas after Christmas, we started to play tougher teams in the Europa League, and we suffered worse results, I guess, maybe. But certainly in the Premier League, you're right. The results did improve in the second half of the season in relation to the first half, but still, for me, not really good enough. I mean, we'll come on to sort of mark out a 10 for the Premier League in a minute when we've all gone through it. What about you, Dave? What did you make of the Premier League season? Could you see any massive or any improvements from the season before, or do you think, as Dorsey said there, pretty much similar as it was before?
I suppose when you kind of summed it up at the start, Rich, it's kind of like, whoa, we didn't actually do too much different. We finished kind of exactly where we were. Look, we went a small bit further in the Europa League, which we'll get onto. But no, like, there's just, I suppose at the start, so it was similar to yourself, Rich. It was that I felt we started off okay, but we didn't necessarily think we were playing well. And then we had won our first 2. We won our first 2. Then we went away to Liverpool. Look, we said, okay, look, we lost that. We probably, I suppose, expected it, I suppose, if we were really true to ourselves. But then we went on, we won again, and then we went to Old Trafford, we won at Old Trafford, and we're kind of thinking, look, we're doing okay here. And then we just went crazy. After Old Trafford, it was like they just went off the boil completely. And then it was just until that day, that Christmas Day, or the day after Christmas Day against Chelsea, we kind of seemed to we kind of found something there that we could work with. And then with Smith Rowe coming in, and yeah, we've done well since then. I still don't think we're playing overly well, even though like the results have gone okay. And I would say with Smith Rowe and that coming in, I still like the football isn't anything exciting, and we're not creating buckets of chances. We've been efficient with our chances we've made, but there's just a couple, like there's games that I know the season was poor and all that, but there's games where I think back and I'm thinking we got 0 points against Villa from the 2 games, 0 points against Wolves from the 2 games. We only got 1 from 6 against Burnley. You know, we drew at home to Southampton, we drew at home to Fulham. You know, there's some of those, and we lost at home to Leicester as well. I know we beat them away, but you have to win your home games, and then whatever you can do away, I find then that's kind of bonus. But there, like I always look back at it and I'm kind of thinking, if you maybe picked up another couple of points here and there, it might be a little bit different. But I suppose these are things to work on. But I suppose our record is kind of work on the opposite. We did actually well against the bigger teams, and then it was the kind of the teams you expect to win. We did a little bit worse, and so I suppose that's where you have to work on it. And as we said, the defensive record has got better. So maybe as we all thought, the defense was the problem. Maybe it's up front that's the problem now. You know.
Yeah, there has been a big shift. Actually, you're right, because the results against the poorer teams where we always did well, they were the guaranteed points, weren't they, every season? And this season, they're the points that we've dropped. And against the better teams, we've done better. And equally, defensively, where we had been poor for a number of seasons, that let us down. This season, that's been good. And whereas we always scored a lot of goals, and this season, that's been opposite. So it's almost a complete opposite season to maybe what we've been used to. Maybe that's why we found it so difficult to get our head around, because it wasn't what's been expected over recent years. I mean, what did you make of it all, Scott, the Premier League season? Have you seen anything to maybe feel excited about for next season? Improvements? Obviously, there are certain areas of the team, as we've said, certain statistics that have improved. But do you see anything physically that you've looked at and thought, you know what, I can see the progress that we maybe have made this season?
In spits and spats, yes. It's going to be hard because I expect such an overhaul this summer. I know we've been crying out for it, and every summer we say it, but this one specifically. So there has been sprouts of positivity, of hope. Obviously, we're just talking about Smith Rowe emergence this season. But with every positive, there seems to be 2 negatives this year. You know, you look at, I think Saka's been overplayed. I feel as though he's tailed off towards the end of the year. He was kind of a surefire candidate for Player of the Year. And we'll talk about it later, but when I was thinking about candidates for the Player of the Year, started becoming tricky. And from the youngsters, yes, Martinelli's obviously got a goal under his belt, which was nice. It was nice for him to get, even if it was scrappy, just for his confidence. So hopefully next season we're going to have a fresh Martinelli coming into the squad. But I just feel as though there's been so many changes this year. Ultimately, by Arteta, he couldn't settle on a first 11. I think I saw a stat today where there was something like 37 different lineups. I don't know how true that was.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw that.
It sounds. Oh, sorry guys. Is my mic any better now? I just made a few changes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Yeah.
Good as gold. Yeah. Sometimes when I use StreamYard, the viewers get a bit of a delay. So apologies if my voice isn't in sync with my mouth. Which might not be a bad thing actually, but like I say, it's just the inconsistencies came into play this year. There was so many times where you felt as though, let's capitalise. How many times did we say that? How many opportunities? How many doors were open this year where it was like we'd play on the Sunday and quote unquote our rivals, Burnley, Southampton's, all our big rivals, we're all dropping points. And we just didn't ever capitalise, and then all of a sudden we'd pull something out. But ultimately, I can't say any better than what you guys already have. Is that the early season form just absolutely cost us as far as the league goes. We was always chasing our tails. And despite us finishing close to the 23 league game season, as people are now using to push their sort of whether it be pro Arteta or pro positivity narrative, I don't know what you want to call it, but the season is 38 games at the end of the day, and the table don't lie. And we are the 8th best team in the league, and that's where we finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we maybe wasn't actually really the 8th best team overall. We just had a good finish to make us finish in 8th. And I guess where you finish is where you finish.
Perhaps. Yeah,
you probably do deserve to finish where you do, but I don't know. We wasn't as high as 8th very much in the season, where we generally spent most of it below that position. So we just had a good finish. I mean, just quickly then, what mark would you give out of 10 for the Premier League season, Dorsey? You go first. What would you give it out of 10?
I'm basing this purely on the fact that we beat United away, which was a monkey that has been on our back for a long period of time. I did the double over Chelsea, beat Spurs. So in the bigger games, I've gone for a 5 out of 10 because I am overall I'm pretty disappointed in the whole season. But certainly those games that I've just mentioned are kind of highlights for me that. They're the big games that I want to be competing in, want to be winning. We just need to obviously sort the format against the rest of the league. So, yeah, 5 for me.
Okay, 5 is probably not too far off where I suppose where we've been most of the season. What about you, Dave? What would you give the Premier League season out of 10?
I'd say 5 as well, which I'd say middle of the road. Look. It just, I suppose, we kind of finished where we were last year as well. So, look, we haven't, you could argue we got worse, but we haven't got better. So I'd say, look, middle of the road, 5, and we'll go forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably not far off that. Can you hear us, Scott? Are you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely here, mate. It's just, I'm not a pretty sight. I've been wasting away. Remember the old Pot Noodle advert when the guy was on the sofa and he's like, I'm wasting away. My missus has been out, and I said, bring us some fish and chips in. She was like, yeah, no worries. She said, what time are you going live? I said, 7:30. And she's just rocked up now, and I'm so hungry. So, yeah, I can talk in between.
You crack on. I mean, what would you give the Premier League season out of 10 then, Scott, for you?
Yeah, do you know what it is? I have a real issue with out of 10s. I do my player ratings out of 10 because that's what people want, but I find it hard to differentiate like a 4 from a 3 or a 3 from a 2 or generally speaking, most people say 6 is average. So if you're going on a basis of 6 of an average, for me it's in the 4s. So stick me down for a 4. It's my lucky number anyway.
4, okay. No, I mean again, you can't really argue with that. I would probably agree with you, Scott. Actually, I would probably give it a 4, just because I felt as though it wasn't as good as it should have been. We dropped a lot of silly points, as we've mentioned, to some of the lesser teams that we should have been expected to beat, especially at home. And had we done that, had we won those games at home that we should have won, even in the way that the games planned out on the day, we could well have won a few of them. We would have been maybe top 6. So we've let ourselves down, and I can't really give it any more than that. So I suppose 2 5s and 2 4s. I guess maybe 4.5 is probably where we are overall with the Premier League season. And I guess which it probably sums it up pretty much, doesn't it? I think for the way it went. And we've had a few comments actually in the chat there. Terry's in. How you doing, Terry? Says good evening, Richard, Dave, Dorsey, and Scott. The prawn sandwich Arsenal fan. Well, he's fish and chips Arsenal fan tonight, so that's fine. Because he's eating his fish and chips, that's good. Gary as well from DWTT. Hello, Richard, Dorsey, Scott, Duck, and Dave. Of course, he means, Scott says there no head guard needed tonight. Of course, if you go on Scott's channel, you can actually punch him as well. What sort of virtually punch him, shall we say?
Something you guys would love to do. I know you would.
Sometimes, but most of the time, not really. But anyway, and Gary says Arsenal lost season in first 15 games with 8 losses. Needed to be perfect with incomplete squad health and recruiting. Yeah, no, that pretty much is right. It was the first sort of half of the season really that cost us. Terry says, yeah, spot on, Scott. I 100% agree with what you're saying. So there you go. And we've got somebody else in there. Looks like Ivan or sort of Eve Gan, whatever.
Egan.
Makes it a little bit difficult to get that. He says, breaking news, Brighton are among the clubs interested in Nketiah, so he could be used as part of the Basuma deal. Well, that would be good if that's true. I would quite...
These swap deals never happen, though, do they? But barring Mkhitaryan and Sanchez, how often do you ever hear about swap deals?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, we've got one or two in the pipeline that could happen, I suppose, or potentially with Newcastle as well. They want in Willock. You know, there's maybe a certain player of theirs, a winger, forward player that maybe could benefit us. You know, that could maybe happen as well. So those are the Fabrizio news about Buendia, just out. So. Yeah, well, we're hearing that. Obviously, we're supposed to have been really interested in him. Gary says the Arsenal season 5 out of 10 should mean replacing manager, but this Arsenal doesn't do that. No, you're absolutely right. And Shane says there, good guys. What rating? He says 4 as well, Shane. So it's looking like 4s and 5s, isn't it, certainly for the Premier League season. Scott, as you're a posh cockney, I bet you 50 Cannon coins. You ain't got pie and mash. No, he's got fish and chips, Terry. So he's really posh. So that's pretty good. So that's you know, just for that. So obviously, so the Premier League wasn't really that great in the end, was it? Disappointing. Sort of 4 or 5 out of 10. We're going to give it for that. But the one thing that we maybe had pinned our hopes on was this. In maybe the reverse of the Premier League, actually, we started off in the Europa League, the first sort of the group stage, with a perfect 6 out of 6. First time we've ever done that in a European group stage. But we do have to bear in mind that was probably the weakest group we've ever had and we're ever likely to get. But we still had to win the games, and we did. We won them all pretty comfortably, and it did give a few young players an opportunity, such as Balogun played a few games, got a couple of goals. Willett was playing in those games. He got a few goals as well. I think it did give Pepe a little bit of confidence as well. He scored quite a few goals in the group stage and played generally pretty well. Yes, the opposition wasn't great. And I think, you know, for me, once it got serious and we got to the knockout stages in February, although, again, we didn't have a bad draw with the teams that we got to play, we struggled, didn't we? We struggled to get through them all, apart from maybe that one game against Slavia Prague away. The other games, I think we only won 3 out of the 8 games in the knockout stage, which probably isn't going to get you through where you want to be, and unfortunately that's where we come up short. I mean, Dorsey, what did you make of the Europa League? Obviously we're disappointed we didn't get to the final because we had a great opportunity which we didn't turn up for, but what did you make of it overall?
Yeah, I think again relatively disappointing, if I'm being honest. Obviously started well with the competition, with the group stages, like you say. Obviously we need to bear in mind the teams that we were playing against, but we did all right against. We dispatched them pretty comfortably. We scored plenty of goals. We didn't concede too many, so it kind of started quite well, really. Like you said, you were able to bleed some youngsters into the team, get some minutes, which is always a benefit. But yeah, like you said, as soon as we got to the knockout stages, I mean, for me, we were lucky to get to the semi-final. Really, we could have been quite easily could have been knocked out before then. Again, with the teams that we got drawn, we should really be getting to the final, really, with the squad that we've got. That squad is still good enough to get to the final of that competition. So again, I was really disappointed into the knockout stages, and especially the 2 games against Villarreal. Those 2 were probably, we'll come on to a bit later, but probably my lowest point of the season, if I'm being honest. Those 2 games, really disappointed with that. But actually, I mean, I know a final is a final and anything can happen, but having lost against Chelsea a couple of years prior in the Europa League final, I'm not sure I could have stood getting beaten by Man United in another European final a couple of years later. So maybe in hindsight it was a good thing, but yeah, overall still pretty disappointed with the competition having got through. Should have had quite a lot of confidence going into the knockout stages, but we just didn't look confident in winning many of those games at all. So yeah, overall pretty disappointed again, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, I personally felt that, you know, especially when we saw that way the draw had opened up later on in the competition, that was a great opportunity to reach the final. And yeah, you know, we may well have lost it, but who knows? When you're in it, you've got a chance. And, you know, we did win the final last year against Chelsea in the FA Cup that maybe we wasn't expecting that we would. So, you know, you never know. I'd rather have been in it than not have been in it, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
Would have had the game to look forward to tomorrow night, wouldn't we? And we wouldn't have been doing this show now. We would have been doing a preview probably of the Europa League final, which I'm sure we'd all have preferred to be doing. But anyway, so I felt it was a missed opportunity. I mean, what did you make of the Europa League campaign overall then, Dave? It was an opportunity to get some young players in the team for a bit, wasn't it? Certainly in the group stage.
Yeah, that's I suppose one thing I like about it, Rich. It's always kind of I suppose a small bit of a getaway from the Premier League. You know, when the youngsters out there, always a breath of fresh air. But it turns out we needed youngsters nearly more in the Premier League than we did in the Europa League.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Even we didn't even get that this season. Yeah, overall we cruised through the group stages. I particularly liked the group stage because being Irish, I had the added interest of Dundalk being in our group as well. You know, so I enjoyed the 2 games against Dundalk, especially anyway. And then I suppose that's kind of where the good form kind of ended in the Europa League. I think we were on your show, Rich, and we've talked before that we played Benfica. We felt like we got out of jail, and then we played Olympiacos. We were kind of we're saying the same thing. If we get anyone any way better, we're gone. And then we drew against Slavia Prague. We actually had a good performance away against Prague. So I suppose that kind of came out of nowhere really as well, you know. And then we went into Villarreal, and over the 2 legs, they were abysmal. I think it'll go far to see a team to have so little intensity and passion and fight and drive to win a semi-final. There's no team, or I can't ever remember Arsenal performances like that would spring to mind that lacked so little, especially for a semi-final, you know. So they were especially hard to take. So yeah, I suppose I'm kind of echoing Dawes a little bit as well. The final would have been basically, I was gone off social media if we lost to United in the final.
Yeah.
So I'll take that a small
Delete
bit.
account.
But no, look, I suppose it was nice kind of, I suppose, to get away from the Premier League. That's the way I always looked at it. And then we got to the semi-final. I suppose if the semi-final is probably the minimum you expect from the Europa League if you got in there. So I suppose we done, I suppose, the minimum of what you would expect, and then we'll probably feel like we did leave one behind us, I suppose, against Villarreal, and then in the final in a one-off game, you just never know. So,
Yeah,
as
exactly.
you said, Rich, I'd rather be doing a preview with you ahead of tomorrow night, I suppose, than doing a review of the season. But that's how it goes.
No, it does, yeah. And it's again, I'll say I still think that was a missed opportunity. Shane, Dave's got a question for you. He says, "What county are you from?"
Limerick.
Oh, okay, cool. Because obviously, I know Shane's from Ireland as well, isn't he? And we did have. It says, yeah, it was. Yes, I vegan. So there you go. That was what that was. What that meant. I couldn't quite figure it out, but yeah, you can see it quite clearly now, which is good. And Gary says there, from Fabrizio, he says, Buendia is one of the options at Arsenal, seriously considering as potential new signing. Buendia would accept a move to Arsenal, and he is now waiting. So. You know, that's interesting, isn't it? A creative player, which we didn't have enough of those, did we? So that would probably be a good signing if we can get that over the line. Scott, what did you make of the Europa League campaign then overall?
Yeah, we should have. The semi-final was absolutely bare minimum, and that's on a relatively strong Europa League. Given the run of teams. Should the day come we get back in it, whether it be next season, year after, hopefully we'll skip that jump and we'll go straight to Champions League. But you'll be lucky to get a run like that to the final. And listen, playing Man United in the final, it's only a tricky game because we're from the same league. United wouldn't have scared me really. I say that it scared me from the fact that I know how consistent we are. But they're not the Atletico Madrid that we lost to a couple of years ago.
No.
And going into that, you know, there's not many teams at that point could beat Atletico Madrid over 2 legs. So, you know, ultimately we let it go. But this year, like you guys said, I always look at the Europa League as an opportunity to get some youngsters in, get players back that maybe aren't fully fit, that are coming back from injury. You can give them minutes in the Europa League. You know, normally by match day 3, we're pretty much through. You know, we win the first 3 and then it's kind of get the next one. And then the last 2 games are, you know, a bit of a free go most of the time. Yeah. Gonna miss that theme tune, guys. I've got to say, I've got used to that tune. Listen, it's sad. It's sad. And I think it's sad. I was saying building up to that game that, you know, 25 years is it? So I was very, very young the last time we went in Europe. And I'm so used to only having 3 or 4 days between game days. And building up in this competition, my fear was once we realised the league was pretty much out of reach, that added pressure. I think that added pressure took its toll in the end, and bittersweet losing to Emery. It had to happen. If he doesn't turn up tomorrow night and he gets steamrolled by United, then my outlook on Emery is gonna drop, because you've done brilliant in that competition. You've won it. You came to us. You bottled it. You knocked us out, and now we need one little favour from you. Just win it one more time and move on. Go into the sunset, and we don't want to see you, and you don't want to see us. But if he rolls over tomorrow night, I'm going to look back on Emery and think, you utter git. Do you know what I mean? Like, seriously, it wins it, and then gets us knocked out, and then doesn't even beat United. But we'll see. But listen, we're gonna miss being out of Europe next year. It's gonna, from a fan perspective, at the end of the day, I think me and you were talking about it, Rich, last week on my channel about, do we want Conference League? At the end of the day, I'm an Arsenal fan. I want to watch my team play football, and if I've got an option between a Thursday night sitting here doing some overtime for work, or I might be watching the soaps with the missus or whatever, or I could be watching us play a Wi-Fi code, I'll take the Wi-Fi code at the end of the day, because it's still football, and it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same watching other people play. Tomorrow night, I've got a stream I'm doing tomorrow night with a couple of guys doing a similar sort of thing as what we're doing tonight, and I'm going to do that because I'd rather do that than sit there and watch United play. So we're going to miss it. Yeah. We are going to miss it as fans.
No, we are, yeah, and it's we're just gonna have to get used to it. I guess hopefully it's only one season. Terry says he said, Scott, hope you enjoyed your rainbow trout and Dauphinoise potatoes.
Just for evidence, look, there's the chips, look, sausage, right?
That's someone else's. Terry, that's someone else's. Don't listen to him.
Comes from. I don't know where he got that from.
It's because you're from Kent, that's why. Living in Kent,
I was living in Medway for a few years. That's like the arsehole of Kent. That is not posh.
Well, no, that's true, actually. So. Yeah, no, that's fair enough, actually. Yeah, we'll give you that one.
I'm not there anymore. I got out.
Well, yeah, as most people try to do, but some are still there, unfortunately. But there you go. So, what do we give it out of 10 then for the Europa League? Then, Dorsey, what would you say for that?
I struggle with this one a little bit, because regardless of how we got there or whether we deserve to be there, we were one step away from being in the final. So technically speaking, yeah, I know it's all the bare minimum, and I know taking into account the teams that we played, we should be beating. But if you want to kind of cut it black and white, we got to the semi-final of a European competition, and I toyed between 6 and 7 based on that fact. So I think on the spot, I'll go in the middle and stick with a 6.5 out of 10. I think just purely because we got so close to it. Whether or not we deserve to be there is a different question entirely. But yeah, 6.5 out of 10 I'll go for.
I didn't do half. Right. I didn't do half numbers on my graphic, so
we go 6 out of 10 then.
6 out of 10. There you go. 6 out of 10. That's good. I didn't do half.
It's hilarious. We all do it, because even though it's out of 10, you think about it. You got 10 numbers, but you still feel like you need them extra numbers, those decimals, didn't you?
But no, I mean, 6 or 7 is probably about right. What about you, Dave? What would you give the Europa League campaign out of 10 if pushed on the subject?
I promise I'm not copying Dawsey's ratings. I'm going to go 6 as well. Rich, I would have...
You'll be copying my homework.
I have, I think. But no, I suppose if we lost to someone better, if we went out to United, for example, in the semi-final, I possibly would have went to a 7, I suppose, purely for the caliber of the opponent. I suppose the Villarreal, it's kind of left a sour taste how poorly and and the way we went out, the manner of it. So I'd say, but overall, I kind of said, look, semi-final is the minimum. So I'd say 6. Yeah, it's probably fair there.
Yeah, I suppose that's not too far off. What about you, Scott? What would you give the Europa League campaign out of 10?
It's just completely tricky, isn't it? Because had we got to the final, it would have completely changed it, really, because that was our minimum expectation with that run. So, yeah, 6 being the default. I don't want to copy, but 666, let's go with it. Seems pretty inept.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think Dorsey was tempted for a 7, actually, really, wasn't he? But he didn't want to. Kind of go
to first. You're under the gun, aren't you? In like poker, like when you're above the big blind, you're under the gun. Everyone's like, when you go first, you're showing your hand. So you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, what's he on about?
But no, I mean, I think you're right in a way that we got. I agree with what Scott said earlier, that the semi-final should have been the minimum anyway. Yeah. That we should have expected from being in the Europa League. With the draw that we got, that was definitely the minimum, and we should have got through that. So for me, I think we underperformed in the Europa League. We should be in the final tomorrow. We should have got through. So I'm actually going to give it a 5. just on the basis that I felt it was an underperformance. We didn't, a bit like the Premier League, I thought that was an underperformance. I think the Europa League was an underperformance as well. It's probably going to be a theme for the other competitions that we're coming to as well, I would imagine.
Did you actually make graphics for 7, 8 and 9, Rich? Because you're mad if you did.
I did, but I'm hoping to save them for maybe some player ratings later on that they might get used.
We can use them then.
Some of them might. I'm not quite. There won't be too many. We wouldn't imagine, but there may be one or two. So we'll see. Hopefully, some of them will come up. So obviously, the Europa League then didn't really go to plan in the end, and another competition which was a more disappointment, I suppose. One that maybe we'd enjoyed great success in the year before. So maybe this hurt a little bit more, perhaps. I mean, for me, there was no real reason to play the team that he played against Southampton in the fourth round. We showed a few days later when we played a proper team, if you like, in the league game, we beat them quite comfortably. Just goes to show we could have possibly done that in the FA Cup. We could have progressed through, and who knows, could have kept our season alive on that side as well. So for me, again, a bit like every other competition, it was wasted opportunity there. I felt it was to. I mean, would we have gone on and won it again? Who knows? But we would have been in Leicester's side of the draw, so we would have come up against Leicester, who, were a bit hit and miss through the season, if we're honest, especially at home. Who knows? We could have maybe got to the final, and we've got a great record of beating Chelsea at Wembley. So, maybe that was an issue that Arteta risked the FA Cup at the time in January. We didn't need to. The Europa League wasn't starting for another month. He had no reason to rest the players that he did and play the team he played in that game for me. And I thought he threw away the chance of retaining the cup or giving us an opportunity to retain the cup for me. What did you make of that? Obviously, the third round, we struggled to get past Newcastle after extra time, if we're totally honest as well. Maybe Smith Rowe had been given a red card, he got overturned, and he ended up scoring the goal in extra time. But we kind of struggled through that. But for me, it was the team selection that cost us the FA Cup this year, and I didn't see the need for that. What did you make of that, Dorsey?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of struggling, I think we've struggled against most of the games we've played this season, whether we've win, lose, or draw. But again, being the champions, and like you say, the success that we've had in that competition, it's a competition that's always been very close to my heart, as I'm sure it is for you guys as well. So it's always one through Wenger's reign, and we've always taken deadly seriously, and that shows in terms of how many times we've gone on to win it. So, there's not much to really digest with the FA Cup, is there? We played 2 games, we won one and we lost one. So, I agree with what you said. I mean, in terms of the team selection, it was a huge risk playing that team. Maybe you thought they were good enough to get the result. Maybe there was a bit of naivety there in that sense. But yeah, really, really, really frustrated with the FA Cup because it's a competition that I always like to do well in. So it was a shame that ended pretty abruptly, really, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, before it really got going, and for me, there was no reason to rest the players at that stage of the season. It wasn't like, I say, if it was during the Europa League campaign later on, you could maybe have understood it. Terry says there, spot on. Richard Terry was embarrassing. Going back to the Europa League, Terry says he just wants to say he likes your top doors in a cannon the right way round. Indeed, my cannon's the right way round, and my top as well. If you can see it, there you go. So, we need to have the cannons the right way round, don't we? And again, going back to Europa League, Gary says there, with nothing to lose, Arteta played Saka at left back. The game after may have made a difference. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, again, Arteta's mistakes that he's made. What did you make of that end, David? The FA Cup, obviously not a big run, just 2 games. What did you make of the team selection at Southampton then that we went with?
Yeah, I suppose we kind of discarded the FA Cup, but it's not as if we were in a prime position in the league either. We were still only, as we say, 11th or 12th or hovering around those positions. So our league was kind of gone after that run, I suppose, between October to December. I'm sure we'd all agree on that, So I suppose I didn't see the point of discarding the FA Cup. But it was kind of I suppose, to go and win the league game that Tuesday night against Southampton, which we did end up winning. But I suppose if you were to ask us which would we have preferred, we probably would have said the FA Cup game when you look at the table as well. So, I suppose you can make changes, but I suppose he probably made too many changes on the day, and that's what cost us as well. So, Yeah, I was disappointed, as we all said. Look, we usually go on runs in the FA Cup, and we're used to getting to Wembley, so we'll never ever refuse a day out in Wembley, be it a semi-final or a final, you know. So it'd be nice to get there again, you know. Look, when usually the FA Cup nearly saves the season at times, so it would have been nice to have another FA Cup to save this season. But no, hopefully, I suppose next season you'll probably see full steam ahead in those competitions now. So you never know, we might win another one next year.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I kind of felt a little bit as though, and I think that the team selection at FA Cup game maybe kind of summed it up, that maybe because the FA Cup only brings Europa League qualification, or I don't even think it had that this season, did it? Whereas obviously the Europa League had Champions League qualification as the prize. I don't know whether that played on Arteta's thinking. He thought to himself, you know what, throw everything into the Europa League and don't worry about the FA Cup, because the prize at the end of it isn't as big. And I don't know whether that played a part in his team selection in that particular game. Maybe he wasn't that fussed. It looked like we wasn't that fussed about getting through. Let's be honest, the way we played that day and the selection. I mean, what did you make of that, Scott? Do you think that was an opportunity that we just threw away for no particularly good reason?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm echoing what you guys are saying. It just felt too soon. The thing is, what I try and explain to people, right? Well, you have to kind of know, we have to know our place, right? Whether we like to believe it or not. For a number of years, we're not going to get anywhere near the league, right? And until we've dropped into the Europa League, we were just making the numbers up in the Champions League for a lot of years. So ultimately, for a number of years, the best trophy we could win was going to be the FA Cup, whether we like it or not. And we have. And we've gone out there and it saved Wenger's job. And then we doubled up and tripled up and we've racked the FA Cups up. And ironically, a lot of the time we've won the FA Cup have been when we've had the more difficult runs. I think there was one where we literally had Everton. We had Everton, Spurs, Liverpool. Chelsea. I don't know. We had them all. And the years where we don't win that competition does seem to be when we have the mid-tier Premier League teams. If we get a Championship team or a League One team, we normally do what we need to do to get through, with a couple of exceptions. But as soon as we get those middle tier, the old Leicesters, the Southamptons, those kind of teams, we always get stuck at the managers, whoever it's been over the last X amount of years, they get stuck in that, well, how strong do I really go? And there's always, like you say, there's always thinking about another competition. And that's been the Europa League this year. And yes, listen, European trophy, we haven't had it for 27 years or whatever it is now. I think that's right. I understand prioritising it, but listen, it was nowhere near that game. And it was really disappointing, and it was obvious we were going to beat Southampton the days after. That always happens. It's always the way. I would have definitely have gone stronger. Yes, there's still no guarantees. There's no guarantees you're going to go on and win the trophy. But like I say earlier, as Arsenal fans, that's the excitement, isn't it? That's the trophy. That's the biggest trophy outside of a European trophy you can win. And as much as people banter us off, rival fans are your stat merchants for your FA Cups and everything. Look at Chelsea fans. They were disappointed not to win that. When you get in the last stage of the FA Cup, people go back and talk about when Man United pulled out of it all those years ago after their treble winning year, that it lost all of its prestige. No, I don't agree with that. I think you look at the Leicester players the other day, as professional players, if you haven't got an FA Cup medal on your CV, you definitely want one. And that's our level, guys. That has been our level for a number of years. So I don't think we should ever turn our nose up at it. I think we should always try and go deep in it. And it does seem to be that if we had not been playing Southampton that day, if we'd had a Spurs, if we'd had maybe an Everton or a West Ham, I think he would have gone stronger. I just think that I think there was an element of, I think this will be enough. And we know Southampton always, they're one of our bogey teams, aren't they? So he made a mistake that day, and I think that was a bit of not a turning point, but it was a big. If we look back on this season and we were going to highlight certain points, I felt like that was a very key point in the season, because at that point we were kind of like, okay, the eggs are firmly going to have to be in Europa League as fans, because I get no enjoyment out of finishing in the top 6, get no enjoyment really out of finishing out in the top 4. We've done it for years. Call me privileged, call me entitled, call me whatever you want, but it just became a given at some point, and I just felt, oh well, top 4. I couldn't celebrate it, but obviously now standards have lowered. Perhaps we would celebrate it, but it's all about trophies. This is what this game's about, winning trophies.
No, it is, and as you mentioned there, the FA Cup has been a good competition for us in recent years, and it has maybe given us the only kind of joy that we've experienced in the last few seasons. Winning the FA Cup, 4 times since 2014. It's a great run, and most clubs would love to have had a run like that in that competition. And this year was an opportunity. I felt that we could have done something similar. We were holders of a cup as well, and yes, the prize at the end of it this season maybe isn't what it used to be. There isn't the Champions League either, so maybe you can understand why the Europa League. But at that particular point, there was no reason to throw that game, really, was there? So, I was a bit upset about that, really. So what would we give that out of 10? We'll start with Scott this time, and to give Dorsey the opportunity, so he doesn't go first again.
Right, Dorsey, what are you going, mate? Just DM me, yeah? So, what would I give it? Well, we've kind of agreed that 6 is kind of like minimum expectations, I think, haven't we? So on that basis, I'm going to go 4. I'm going to go 4. I was bouncing on 3, but we'll go 4.
No, 4.
I think a 3. I think below that you'd have to kind of get knocked out in the third round to a minnow or something. But
yeah, possibly. What going in, Dorsey? What do you think then? 4.
I had actually had 4 written down. But I agree with what Scott was saying about the FA Cup. It's a competition that I don't ever want to see disregarded. Winning, because I watched the game Leicester-Chelsea, and when they won it, that's exactly what the FA Cup should mean to absolutely any team that is in that competition. And I sat there and actually, I mean, it's not a soft spot for Leicester, but I like the way the club's run. I like the owners, the way they act with the club, the way they interact with fans. It's, for me, if I was a Leicester fan, I would be incredibly proud of that club and the way they've kind of built that club up. So I actually really enjoyed that final. I watched all the celebrations and I enjoyed it for them. And that's exactly what the FA Cup should mean to everybody in this country. So yeah, really disappointed. I did toy with a 3, but like Scott was saying, I think you really got to get knocked out to a lower league team or something like that to really want to justify that. So I went with a 4 as well.
Okay, now 4 seems about right. What about you, Dave? What are you giving the FA Cup performance for the season?
I'm going to say a 3, Rich, because I think the way we went out, we went out with a whimper, and I don't think we gave it a real go against Southampton, and we kind of went out similar enough to the Europa League. We kind of went out without actually doing anything in the game, and we the way we just discarded it, I suppose, when you look at where we were in the league as well. And the Europa League, that wasn't for nearly 2 months' time ahead. I think we just completely discarded it when we never ever should have had. So I just think we didn't show, for a competition, as we say, that's been good to us. Arteta didn't show really any respect. So I think a 3, and on my opinion, I get what the lads are saying, but I think for the way we went out, I think a 3, in my opinion, would be fairly justified.
Yeah, no, I sort of agree with that, because for me, yes, I think we said before, that if we'd maybe drawn against Manchester United or we'd drawn against Liverpool or someone, we might have played a stronger team. I don't know if that's true, but equally, if we'd played against a lower league team, we'd have probably put out a similar side, and we could have come unstuck then as well. Because some of these, lower league teams, they raise their game for them sort of ties, don't they? So, it was a risky policy by Arteta. So I'm actually going to agree with Dave. I'm going to go for a 3 as well, because it was a wasted opportunity. We should have beat Southampton. We showed that 3 days later when we beat them in the league. They were there for the beating, and we went with the wrong team, and we approached that game all wrong, and it cost us the opportunity. Like Dorsey said there, the FA Cup final is a great day, and it was a great day for Leicester. And I was pleased for Leicester, actually. They'd never won it before. They've been through a difficult time with their owner and all that kind of stuff. In recent years, and they are a well-run club, and we experienced that last year, but we didn't, because we didn't have any fans in the ground. It would have been nice to have been at that this year, and I guess that was an opportunity missed. We probably wouldn't have known that back in January when we got knocked out. But yeah, I thought it was poor decisions.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you recording the scores so we can see who's the most miserable Arsenal fan at the end of the day with the lowest scores?
No, but I think I might be winning at the minute, actually. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. At the end of the night, there's going to be one of us that's like mega low. He's the most pissed off.
To be fair, most of our scores are fairly similar, aren't they? I think we all feel roughly about the same about it. I guess it depends on how you view the scoring, really, the scoring system. For me, we got knocked out of the FA Cup at the second attempt and second round. So really, you could have only got a 1 or a 2 when you look at it that way. Regardless of who we lost too early. We should, we used to having good runs in the competition, but I suppose a 3 is probably about fair, really. So it just leaves the one other competition, obviously, that we did compete in, although, again, that didn't really end up going too great, did it? I'm just trying to find the little thing for it. Oh, it's there. There it is. Yeah, this one. Sort of slightly different the way they did it this year. There was 2 rounds early on in the season, and then there was a long gap to wait until the quarter-final, which was just before Christmas. Maybe not the best time for us to have played that game. I mean, the first 2 rounds, yes, Leicester and Liverpool both played weaker teams in those, as we did, and we kind of got through there without letting in a goal, actually. A good win at Leicester, and then we won on penalties against Liverpool, and then there was, that big long gap until we played Man City. And, of course, we all know what happened in that game, the Renarson game, as I'm going to call it, where, we actually played fairly well, actually. We lost 4-1 in the end.
I swear to God.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a 4-1 game, was it? Overall, we played pretty well. Martinelli came back from his injury, had a decent game, set up the goal for Lacazette, and, it looked as though we may have been on track at one point. And then, of course, Renarson in the second half had a bit of a nightmare, didn't they, unfortunately, and that cost us that. So, and obviously Man City, they keep winning this competition anyway, so we'd have probably done well to have beaten them in any case, regardless of that. But again, a little bit disappointing for me, but I don't really, it was just individual mistakes by the goalkeeper cost us on that night. And you never know, if Leno had been in goal, or if we'd had Matt Ryan, then who knows, we may well have sneaked through, and then we could have ended up winning that competition, which is something we haven't done much in ever, really. We've only won that twice as well, actually. But what did you make of that then, Dorsey, the kind of Carabao Cup kind of run? Because it started off quite well. We knocked out 2 good teams, didn't we?
Yeah, I think like you said, you summed it up pretty well. I mean, Leicester away, Liverpool away, two tough games, regardless of kind of what teams they put out, really. Because, like you say, we fielded weakened teams as well. So to get through those 2 games is can only be a positive thing, really. I think for me, as soon as we drew Man City, I think that the writing was on the wall a little bit for me. I think we would have been lucky to get past that at any given time, given how successful they've been within that competition. Was it 4 or 5 in a row? I think they've won it now. So I think that was always going to be a big ask, getting past City. But like you say, on the day, I actually thought we played pretty well. It was just individual areas that cost us. So when you sum up the competition, again, using kind of a black and white perspective, we've beaten 2 teams and got knocked out against the best team in the country. So it was probably one of the more successful competitions that we were kind of in really this season. So it certainly wasn't my least favourite competition of the season, put it that way.
No, I mean, I think maybe that Man City game as well, although I agree. I thought we played pretty well that night. Came at the end of that really poor run that we'd been on, in the league as well. So maybe wasn't the best timing. Maybe if we played it earlier in the season when we played the other 2 rounds, who knows? Because they started the season quite badly, Man City. We may have got through that. And then, it's just the way the competition went, I suppose. I mean, what did you make of that then, Dave, the Carabao Cup? The competition that we could do with winning a few more times, actually, couldn't we, if we're honest?
Yeah, we don't really have, I suppose, a whole pile of history with it, do we? We had that horror final against Man City, and then we kind of had that one against Birmingham as well, and then we had the one against Chelsea as well. So we've bad memories out of that one, I suppose, more so than and when you compare it to the FA Cup. But yeah, we won away at Leicester. We probably thought, look, we'll probably lose here. Then we went and we won at Anfield as well. It's never a bad thing to win at Anfield, regardless. Because when you look at our league record as well, it's shocking when we go to Anfield. So it was nice to pick up in there as well. And follow it on from the Community Shield. We beat them as well, so that was nice as well. Then, yeah, the writing was on the wall. I think though when it got to Man City, because Man City have 2 teams, whereas if their second team would probably finish in the top 4, So we were kind of there. So you're looking at a position where we were going to put out a second string team, and we were caught in as well. I probably would have played Leno, I think, that night as well, just because of, I suppose, you're bringing runners in, and you kind of knew it was going to be a busy night and whatnot. So I think he kind of left Runnerson out there for a beatdown, I think. But other than that, yeah, we probably got what we wanted from it. If we got to the semi-final, you probably want to win it. But other than that, I don't think we could be too disappointed. I suppose 4-1 on the night was never really good, but we kind of kicked on from there. Smith Rowe came on in that game, and then at least Martinelli came back as well. So it kind of laid a small bit of the foundation for a good run, when we went into the Chelsea game and onwards. So I suppose there's that side to take from it as well. But yeah, we kind of that was kind of what we'd expect, really, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, it pretty much sums up. Terry actually put a comment earlier in about the Southampton, obviously in the FA Cup. He said we're Arsenal. Any team we put out should beat Southampton and many other teams. Well, I think those days are gone. Unfortunately, I'd like to have thought that was the case, but I don't think it is anymore. And Terry says Chelsea can still do the treble. Lost FA Cup, lost Premier League, and hopefully the Champions League. That's got to be another record. Well, maybe. I don't know if anyone's done that before, actually. But they did finish in the top 4 in the end, didn't they? Just scraped in on the last day, even though they lost. So there you go. But that was Tottenham's fault. We can blame them again. And Joe's in the chat. He says, "Hi, Rich. I haven't been in for a while. Yeah, I wonder where you've been. I haven't heard you for a while. Glad to see you back." And Scott's put there, smash the likes. Yeah, smash the likes as well if you're watching. There's more people watching than have liked at the minute. So just try to even that out a little bit. And Gary says, "I wonder what Arsenal saw from an Arsenal in practice before he actually put on a game day jersey that didn't worry Arteta." Well, no, exactly. I mean, that particular game was probably one of the worst goalkeeping performances I think I've ever seen from an Arsenal goalkeeper ever in my whole life. And there's been quite a few of them over the years. I mean, that was a disaster. But I mean, I thought we played okay. What did you make of that, Scott? I mean, the Carabao Cup run in general and that particular night in particular.
Yeah, disastrous goalkeeping. I mean, did we hear that the goalkeeper coach was one who recommended him? How much truth in that, I don't know. But whoever recommended him or put his name on forward, listen, players make mistakes. I get that. And as a goalkeeper, when they make mistakes, it inevitably normally leads to a goal. So it's a bigger impact. But yeah, he just looked out of his league. And so many people were saying, well, he's still young. He's not young. I think he's like 26 or something. He's not as young as people thought. So,
no, he's not young. No, inexperienced, but not young.
Yeah, so he might look it, but he's not. So there was a lot of sort of people making excuses there. But at the end of the day, the reality is, as soon as you draw City in the I always call it the Carling Cup. I don't know why. Maybe it was Carling for longer. I don't know. The Carabao Cup. Let's make sure we're all official here. Whenever you draw City, you just game, set, and match. Dave said there about their second team will finish the top 4. I think I said on a stream the other day, I think they could have won the league with their second string this year. Really, I think that the standard of the league has been poor. That's probably another conversation for another stream. But for me, I don't think the league is as strong as some people think. And this is why they've won it 4 years in a row, because they can put out their second or maybe their second and a half, their 2.5 second team, if that makes any sense. And it's just better than everybody else's. They just hoover that trophy up. It's just a given. And until, what was it, 93 we last won it. I was still a baby, really. I was 8 when we beat Sheffield Wednesday. And I remember us getting knocked out in the semis against Villa, I think on away goals. And without the couple of finals we've had, obviously the Birmingham and the Chelsea, that's the closest we've come. We never really have a good run in it. It's not competition that's been kind to us. We do draw. We do tend to draw City or Liverpool at some stage, and we got past Liverpool, and I thought, okay, let's get a nice little reward now. Let's get. I think Stoke was still in it, and Spurs were still in it, and I was like, yeah, let's just have one of those. That's anybody but City, and as soon as you draw them, you turn up, and you just got to hope for the best, really. And I'm not saying we went out because of the goalkeeper; he didn't help, but the reality is it would have been difficult, but. I always have low expectations in that trophy. We've not had a strong enough squad to ever put out a decent second team. Be very, very interesting next year now. I don't know what you guys think, whether we'll take that a bit more seriously, because at the beginning of the season we are only playing once a week, with the exception of that trophy. The FA Cup doesn't kick in until January, so we got 3 months of Premier League and the Carabao Cup. Will we be putting first teams out? It'd be interesting to see.
I mean, I'm hoping we do, because if we do, bearing in mind all the teams that are in Europe generally don't, we would have a great chance of progressing a long way in that competition next season, wouldn't
Yeah.
we? And then, like you said, if we can avoid City, maybe, because like you said, their second team's as good as anybody's first team. So,
Until
I mean,
City go out on that trophy, I don't really take it seriously. Like, you can get past the Chelsea, you can get past the United, even Liverpool on your day, but City in that competition, what is it? Is it 4 in a row and like 7 in 8
Yeah,
years or something?
yeah.
I don't even know what
it's
it is.
like it's the squad, isn't it? Like you said, they can rest
Yeah.
11 players, and they've still got a team that's going to be competitive in that competition. Unfortunately, no one else
Yeah.
can do that. But like you said, next season we've got an opportunity, because if we rest players for the Carabao Cup or whatever they might be calling it next season, you know, when we've got nothing else to play for other than the Premier League, that's madness, really. We might as well just put our strongest. But then he'll see it as the only opportunity to play the young players, won't he? Perhaps, and we'll end up playing the young
problem.
players.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah, and get knocked out early on. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I'd like us to have a decent run in that, actually, because we haven't had a decent run for a while. I know we got to the final the other year and got hammered, but it'd be nice to win that cup again. So what are we going to give out of 10 then for the Carabao Cup? Start with David this time, then. You can go first on this one.
Cheers, Rich. I hope you're listening now, boys. But no, I'd say I go 6. I think, because we beat Leicester, we beat Liverpool, and we lost to Man City. Did you write that down, Scott? No.
Literally, anything you said there, I was like, I'm already going to react no matter what number he comes up with.
Save that for your stream tomorrow. No, no. I suppose. Look, I think if going to 7s and that, I don't want to be taking your ratings now or dampen on it. But my opinion, I think when you go 7s or higher, you kind of have to be going maybe further onto the competition, you know, and maybe get to a semi-final or whatever. And 10 or 9 or 10 you'd have to win it, I think, and then maybe a little bit less than that, quarter-final, semi-final maybe. So yeah, I think 6 will go. I'd be happy enough with that. Yeah.
No, that seems fair. What about you, Dorsey? What would you give the Carabao Cup run then out of 10?
I think me and David definitely been copying each other. I think our homework, because I've actually gone for a 6 as well. Just purely based on the 3 games that we've played. When you look at the way the table finished, you played against 3 of the top 5 teams in the country, and you've got past 2 of them. So I think on that basis, I think you'd have to look at it as a slightly more successful, if you like, competition that we've been a part of. So had it not been City, we may have got further and may have done better. But yeah, like Scott was saying, as soon as you play them, you're in trouble, and you need a lot of luck to get past them, especially where we are with this season. So yeah, I've gone for a 6 as well on that one.
Okay, and Scott, what about you? What's your score for that one?
So I'm doing these as I'm thinking of them. I didn't have time to. I was just trying to think of stuff. I didn't actually think of the numbers. So, what did I give the FA Cup? Did I give a 5 or did I go 6?
4, I think.
4.
Did I go 4?
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
Well, I've got to go higher than that. Be purely because, like you say, we did get past Liverpool. So for me, it's between a 5 and 6. But I'm going to go 5. I'm just going to go 5. We're going to deduct a point for the goalkeeper. Really, we were probably going to lose that game, but we guaranteed it by having that player on the pitch.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's how it works out. I mean, for me, the fact that we did beat Leicester and Liverpool both away from home in the earlier rounds, and I thought we actually played okay in that Man City game, and it was just unfortunate the goalkeeper decided he didn't know how to be a goalkeeper in that particular game anymore. He completely forgot what he was doing. And I think we, you know, who knows, that could have gone to extra time or penalties, wherever it was, we may have gone through. So I'm actually going to, surprisingly enough, give the run in that
8.
A 7.
7?
Ooh.
7?
I'm giving it a 7. I'm giving it a 7 because we did beat 2, like we said, 2 of the top 5 teams, and we did give Man City, you know, with what was a weaker team on the night from us as well. We did give them a decent game, and had it not been for the goalkeeper, you know, doing what he did, we could possibly have gone through, and who knows. So I think we deserve a 7 just because of the 2 teams we knocked out earlier on. You know, which
and you need to bump your averages up anyway. You've been a bit.
I do, exactly. I didn't want to become the most miserable one, so I thought I'd give that a 7. But I think that was fair. Gary says Gary's only giving it a 5 actually for the Carabao Cup. I think that's a bit harsh.
Always respected, Gary. Great opinion. That great.
No,
opinion.
it is. I just feel it's a little bit harsh. But anyway, I guess we didn't go as far in it as we would have liked. But in the circumstances, I guess we can't really have too many complaints. Terry says there. Do we go all out to win the cups, or make sure we at least make Europa League, as we can't afford to be out of Europe for too long. Well, obviously winning one of the cups would get us back into Europe anyway, wouldn't it? So I guess we've got 3 opportunities to try and get into Europe next season, 1 in the league and the 2 cups. So we need to take everything seriously as far as I'm concerned, whether we will or not. I'm not sure. Gary says Renarsson's last start was also Martinelli's first start. Yeah, indeed it was. Yeah, back from his injury, the start of the youth movement. Kind of, yeah. I mean, it was really, wasn't it? Because Martinelli did make his comeback on that particular game. So that's kind of the competitions looked at, which, I think overall pretty average, I suppose. So if we're looking at the season overall, then if we're looking for a mark out of 10 for the whole season as opposed to the individual competitions, what would we come up with? Go on in, Scott. You can go first on this one because I know you love these marks.
Oh, now that's bloody harsh, isn't it? What would I give it? Well, going based on my averages, look what I've gone across all the competitions. The decimal would be good here, so I'm going to put another number out there, and you guys will probably go lower and make me look a bit silly. I'm going to go 5 for the year. Underperformed. If we'd stayed where we was at Christmas, then you're getting down to your 3s and 2s in the league. But we recovered it and almost made Europe. So 5 for me.
Okay, Dorsey, what about you overall? Then what mark would you give the season overall?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Scott actually on this one and go kind of middle of the road as well. To be honest, it's been a very average season. Poor in the league, European semi-final, knocked out of both domestic competitions earlier than we would have liked. Certainly the FA Cup anyway. Carabao Cup was probably one that is a bit more positive results in there. But overall, frustrating season and quite underwhelming. So I'm going to go for a 5 as well.
Okay. And Dave, what about you? You're going to complete that trick of 5s, or are you going to go something else?
I'd say I'd go 5 as well, Rich. I think, look, we kind of did a little bit better in the Carabao Cup and a little less on the FA Cup, and we stayed kind of normal in the league, and we did maybe the minimum in the Europa League. So I think, a 5, and then a lot of room to improve. That would be, I suppose, a fair enough, I think, assessment. Yeah.
And Paul in the chat there, he says season overall a Steve Bold 5. Well, I mean, Steve Bold's actually been sacked as well, hasn't he? So maybe that kind of is a good way of describing it, actually. And Gary as well, he says a 5, same as manager. He says bin it. Well, yeah. So I think we're all pretty much in agreement. I mean, I probably would be more tempted to go with a 4, actually, just because I haven't enjoyed the football very much. And the European semi-final, or getting to that stage, shouldn't really be that exciting because that should have been anyway. We should have expected that. And the football wasn't great. And I was left very, very sort of underwhelmed with it all, if I'm totally honest. And we underperformed in pretty much every competition, didn't we? What we should have done. So, I can't unfortunately give it any more than that. Why don't we give out a few? Should we give out a few awards to be like a little bit more positive? They're not all going to be positive.
I haven't
awards.
Prepared a speech though, Rich. I haven't prepared. This is also.
We just have to take it off the cuff then, won't we? Why don't we start with? Let's have a look. Why don't we start with the main award, because that's probably the best way to do it. I'm not sure whether we'll all agree on this actually, but I guess there's one or two.
It's going to differ.
There's going to be one or two main candidates are going to probably stick out. I mean, Dorsey, what would be your vote for player of the season?
Pitching me up every time, isn't you? Putting me.
You prepared. That's
I'm
why.
not going to change mine. I've actually got this name written down. So
yeah, I have as well. I wrote mine down ages ago.
So there's an obvious name of Saka. Let's face it, of as player of the season. But I'm going to be slightly different because he will come onto it, and I'll go on to why. But he's obviously my young player of the season. And actually, when I looked through the squad this afternoon, was kind of trying to pick out players that I thought had been relatively consistent, kind of available more often than not. I've actually gone for Kieran Tierney as my player of the season, just based on the fact that when we missed him for that injury, I think it was a big miss when he's not there. I think he's been very, very good for large portions of the season. It's just a frustration that he just seems to be one of those players that's going to pick up a couple of niggly injuries every season more often than not, I think. So, but I've got to be honest, and I did toy with the idea of looking at Granit Xhaka, and I know that might surprise a few people, but he was pretty much an ever-present throughout the whole league season, and I think he was another one that actually, when we did miss him, we did notice the fact that he wasn't there. So I'm just a worthy mention. It's not going to sit too well with a lot of people, but it's my opinion. And so player of the season for me is KT. I'm going to go for Tierney.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Dave, what would be your choice for player of the season then?
Saka, I'm going to say, Rich. I just don't think we can move away from Saka. Look, I'd like to be maybe a small bit thinking out of it, but he just carried us for so much of this season, and then he kind of went off the boil maybe the last couple of games. But I think that's purely down to fatigue and just over what he had to do all season. He's played right wing back, right back, left midfield, centre midfield, number 10, left midfield, right left back. He's basically covered every position now nearly except goals. Like, so maybe the Carabao Cup next season will throw him in goals ahead of Runnerson.
He certainly won't do any worse, would he? That's for certain.
But no, I just don't think for 19 years carrying a club like, or 19 years of age carrying a club like Arsenal the way he has this season, it's just been crazy. Like, I know we've had youngsters before like Fabregas and all that, but would they have coped carrying a team the way Saka has? And I know you look at around the league and they're kind of giving young player of the season to Phil Foden, and then people are saying Greenwood, and look, they're fair enough arguments, but the two of those players haven't had to have done what Saka has done this season. And then what I do feel for Saka in a way is I don't think he's going to have a good European Championship purely because of what the burnout of this season. And I feel a little bit sad for him in that sense, because he deserves to kind of go away and kind of get away from Arsenal, enjoy himself and have a good run in the Euros. So, but I don't think, unfortunately, he's going to get that. But look, for everything he's done, I think he deserves it anyway, in my opinion. Okay,
no, you can't really argue too much with that. And Scott, what about you? Who's going to be your player of the season?
Yeah, so when I was looking at this earlier, and as I was trying to think a bit like Dorsey, I was kind of looking through the squad, and then because there was no real massive standout candidate. There was nobody like you last year. Pretty much most people would have said Aubameyang because of the way the season ended, and you do tend to fall in that trap, don't you? Especially with like awards and the PFA and all that. If you're good at the second half of the season, that tends to be the people that win because the first half of the season is often forgotten. So, but I struggled to find out a standout candidate. But I narrowed it down, and I very, very nearly went Pepe. And I'll just quickly explain why I nearly went Pepe. Was because I know, again, I'm falling into that trap about the recent form, but I feel as though, given the pressure that he was under this year and the expectations of the fan base, the fact that he was not getting consistent games, not getting the minutes that I feel as though he should have got because William was filling those minutes, his attitude has remained well outside of the one incident we had. So I think his attitude was very good. So he was very, very close, but ultimately just fell slightly short for me. And I agree with Dave. I've gone with Saka for exactly the same reasons. For someone so young, so mature, I've been very vocal on my streams that Aubameyang as a captain, I'm not happy with. When we had that poor run of form, he was hiding in the change room as a captain. He wasn't coming out threatening to the media. And Tierney and Saka, and Saka can't be captain because he's too young, but he was showing captain leaderships. He was out there, he was fronting the media, he was talking to the fans in arguably the hardest, one of the worst periods in our history. And from that, it isn't necessarily what you do always on the pitch, it's how you present yourself and you do everything that comes as a package. And for me, without him, we was already out of the Europa League. He put that cross into Aubameyang against Benfica. We needed that goal when he came good for us there. Tierney was close, but Tierney, just the injuries. It's hard to give it, for me, it was just a bit hard to give it to him because he didn't get enough time on the pitch this season. But listen, if he had played another half a dozen games or more, then he probably would have been the person that won it. For me.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of people agreeing there. Mark's in the chat says Saka, and Paul says Saka as well. Obviously, he's a popular choice, and it's difficult to argue really with Saka. I agree with everything that you said really about him. But I'm going with Dorsey, the fact that Saka's going to be my young player of the year, which we'll come on to in a minute. But I'm actually going to sort of agree with Dorsey as well over the player of the year. For me, I know it's no one's going to like it, but for me, he's been my player of the season because of how consistent he's been. You know, yes,
Rich,
he made.
sorry, I've just looked. Your subscriber count is going down, man. This is like.
I just want to say goodbye to Gary as well. I know he's off now after seeing that. So.
Yeah, I mean, Gary said there about Dorsey saying about Xhaka. I know, you know, he's never going to be a popular player, and I understand that. But for me, this season, what he's done is, one, he's shown real leadership on the pitch. You know, when a very, very massive lack of leadership elsewhere from people that should have been giving it, he kind of steps up. I thought, you know, he never shied away from the media responsibilities. He never shied away from his responsibilities on the pitch. Yes, he made mistakes, and you can't deny that. Every single player in our team's made mistakes, which is why we finished 8th in the league. But I thought overall he was probably our most consistent player. He didn't have a real dip in form as pretty much every other player did. Saka towards the end had a dip because of fatigue. But Xhaka didn't really have a dip. He had an injury towards the end. He didn't play, and he filled in at left back. You know, did his best there as well. And a lot of players would have just complained and moaned about that, not wanting to play. He just got on with it. He did as best as he could. Yes, a couple of mistakes he made, obviously, but I don't know. For me, I thought he's come back from a difficult time the season before when he almost left the club with all that other stuff that happened, and he's kind of recovered from that. You can clearly see he loves playing for Arsenal, and I think he had a good season from start to finish, consistent from day one. Not always fancy, not always flash, but he did his job and he did it consistently well all through the season. And I feel that he probably deserves it just for that basis. You know, other players may have had better games individually at certain points, and I'd agree with that. And some players, you know, contributed more in certain games. But over the whole season, I just thought his consistency, for me, he deserves it for that reason. You know, I thought Lacazette had a good season as well, actually. You know, injuries maybe cost him a little bit, but I thought overall he had a consistent season as well. And, you know, a couple of players maybe not always going to get the credit they deserve. So I felt Xhaka maybe deserves credit this year for how well he did.
I thought as well, Gabriel, for his first couple of months, he started off really well. He won the player of the month. Yeah. I think was it three months in a row.
Wasn't the same.
I think it was the COVID that really slowed him down.
Yeah,
he did, and I think that the problem with Gabriel was he had a good first half of the season, and he had quite a poor second half of the season. And I don't think you can give a player of the season for half a season, unfortunately. And yes, it was maybe the COVID situation. He never quite totally recovered. It took him a while, and he maybe didn't have the best season that he could have done. Gary says, "Did you do that on purpose?" No, I actually wrote it down earlier on when I was planning this. I didn't do it just because of that. I'd already decided. Fair,
Rich, I will say, having listened to your reasonings behind it, like I can't really argue them somewhat, although I've gone for somebody else. Like I think it's a valid suggestion. I know some people will disagree, but that's what this is about, isn't it? So.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, Paul says Xhaka can pass the ball on his day, but for me, he's a modern day Steve Gett. I don't know who Steve Gett is. Does anybody know? Have I missed something there, or did he not finish the?
If you
anyway,
don't know, Rich, they don't exist.
No, well, probably not. And Tracy there says Tierney for me need to be given the armband. I think if he played more games and stopped away from being injured, we can maybe think about that as a possibility. Gary says he's not leaving, even though I've lost my mind. Well, maybe I've lost my mind, but I just feel as though he had a consistent season all the way through, and that for me is what has kind of maybe snuck it in for him. I'll tell you what. Then I know we're probably going to all come up with the same one for this one. Then. Obviously, we know Dorsey said Saka already for young player. So, and I said Saka for young player as well. So that's 2 votes for Saka for young player. So it's just really Dave and Scott. Dave, what about you for young player? Obviously, you went Saka for the main player. Not that you can give it to him for this as well, I suppose.
No, look, I'll change it up. I want to give, even though he's a year older than Saka, I want to give Smith Rowe young player of the year for, I suppose, when he came into the team, we were in a poor run of form, and we kind of changed. The team kind of changed, and we became a lot better when he came into the team. You know, he offers you a lot on the ball, and he offers you a lot off the ball from working hard. He makes runs off the ball. He creates space for the attackers and all that. So I think from that point of view, he really helped with kind of we always kind of attacked down the wings all along, and we got a little bit found out by that, I think, this season. So when Smith Rowe came in, it changed the dynamic of the team, and he kind of picked up a bit of the kind of the slack with Saka as well, and he carried the team on his back along with Saka. So I think I'd like to give him some recognition as well for what he done in the season as well, and I think he deserves the young player of the season. I know you could say if you give Saka the player of the year, he should get young player of the year. But look, it's nice to change it up a little bit.
No, exactly. Again, he had a good impact on the season. Gary says, just going back to Xhaka, he said, when Xhaka speaks, I see leadership more than Uber. Exactly. Plus, he played where he was needed and tried his best. Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I kind of swayed towards him. In terms of young player, you've got Paul in the chat there, agrees with Dave there. He says Smith Rowe. Again, it's hard to disagree with that. I just felt, for me, Saka, out of the two, was probably over the season was probably better. What about you, Scott? Then, what would you say for young player of the year? Obviously, again, you went with Saka for the main player as well.
Yeah, I did go with Saka. So yeah, young player. I mean, it's obvious. Joe Willock. I feel a bit sorry for him actually, because he's put it up on the screen. Don't put it up on the screen, you Wally. Listen, right. That's going to get clipped now, and Scott's gone Joe Willock. Yeah, I mean, he's been great for us the last few games, scored a few goals. I feel sorry for him. He can't beat Shearer's record if he doesn't end up back at Newcastle. He's equalised 7 games in a row. That's impressive stuff. No, listen, if I was, because I've given Saka the player of the year. Say that again, sorry, mate.
Oh, you froze there for a minute, Richard.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know where. Yeah, I don't know where I was. I got carry on. Yeah,
I'll carry on. Yeah, no, because I've given Saka the player of the year. If I was, what have I put? What's going on here?
You said Willock, so I'm putting Willock on.
Right, let me talk about why you're wrong, why I was bantering. Right, listen. So if I was walking in the dressing room and I was giving out these awards, then yes, I would give Saka the player of the year, and I would agree with Dave, and I would give it to Smith Rowe because, like you say, share the love. It does make sense if you, in theory, if you're given the player of the year, and they happen to be a young player, then technically speaking, he's also your young player of the year as well. I get the logic. But for me, share the love. I think Smith Rowe's come in, shown a great attitude. He was pivotal in that Chelsea game. In the change of, the season kind of turned on that day, and yes, okay, he faded away towards the end of the season. He had his injuries and stuff, but for me, yeah, I just think, like I say, if he was physically giving out trophies and stuff, I think it's nice to give it to 2 players rather than 1. And I would just struggle. I'd struggle to give it to anyone else but Saka for the player of the year. So like Dave, we kind of backed ourselves into a corner there to have to find an alternative candidate for the young player of the year. So, but that's where I'll go with it.
No, I mean, and I think, I say there's a few people in the chat there agree with Smith Rowe. Again, maybe a little bit on the Gabriel side. To me, he had half a season, not his fault. He was injured and not selected much in the first half, and then he had a really good second half of the season. So, but for me, it would have to be Saka, just because obviously I haven't given Saka the main player of the year, so he'd have to be young player of the year. Maybe on a slightly different theme, what are we making of this one? I'm assuming we might all agree on this. I think we might all agree on this. This is what we
came here for.
I think we might agree, but you never know. There might be some other ones thrown in. Go on then, Scott. You're itching to get this one in, so I'll let you go for it.
Yeah. So anybody that is watching, if you've watched any of my streams, you can probably guess who this is going to be. But listen, this is very, very different. We're absolutely spoilt for candidates. This was a big decision. Lots of great candidates for worst player of the year. I had to look at their stats and really think about it. And I wanted to make sure I came with the correct name. But after a lot of thought, for all of about 2 seconds, I came up with our Brazilian Superman, an Edu special, Willian, the Chelsea legend.
Yeah, there we go. Nice smiley
face.
You
might as well leave him on the screen, Rich.
which is brilliant. So Dave, who are you going for? Just out of curiosity, who are you going to vote for on this one?
Willian as well. It speaks for itself. Yeah.
Yeah, are we going to get a full house? Let's have a see. Dorsey, what do you reckon? Worst player of the season. What are we going to say?
Gotta be in it. There's no one else.
Well, you say there's no one else. I mean, we've had a pretty poor season, so there's probably a few.
Yeah, but there's a few that are sat there, and then there's Willian down here. You know, if Willian's not there, then it becomes a lot harder.
I think what made it worse is, I mean, I've just given a name, and so have you, Dave, and you, Dorsey, and none of us have actually really said why, other than the fact that we all agree he's been awful.
Well, we don't need to, really. Do we need a reason?
There's a lot more to it, you know. The fact that he was given minutes, Arteta favoured him, the fact that he buggered off to Dubai for a steak with Salt Bay and comes back and straight back in the team. It's just every opportunity to upset the fan base, he found ways of doing it outside of playing poorly.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I don't really think we necessarily need to give a reason why it's Willian. You know, Gary was saying there, not Willian. Yeah, of course it's Willian. Yeah, and Paul says they're the worst player, Willian. Unfortunately, it is going to be a total clean sweep because you can't go anywhere else. I've got to go with him as well. Unfortunately for Willian, sorry, mate. You know, I like your little smile in your hair and stuff, but it's not really. It's not really worked out for you, has it?
Go back to Chelsea, reckons Sky reckon today. I'm like, well, good luck with that. I'm sure they'll really take you back.
And Mark says easy decision on Willian. Yeah, it is. That's probably the easiest category of the lot. Although I think we need to give a special mention to Renarson as well for that Manchester City performance. That was something special. You know, when you're looking at certainly worst performance of the season, that's probably up there. But worst player has to be Willian.
Just throwing it out there, just purely based on the expectations that you would have a player versus what they actually delivered. You've got to throw Aubameyang's name in there. But based on the expectation of what you expect
who
from
would
him,
be the second worst player?
I think
Aubameyang. He'd be up there.
Maybe this category might sort that out, perhaps. So, yeah, most disappointing player, slightly different kind of criteria maybe for that one. So, go on, Dorsey, what would you say for most disappointing player?
I did actually, and this is, I feel a bit harsh saying this because it is Aubameyang for me, and that's not, I mean, listen, the guy, I love the guy to bits, and I can't say a bad word against him, but he set his bar so high over the course of, well, since he's joined Arsenal, but previous to that as well. That's just what you come to expect of him. And for this season, when you take into the fact that everybody thought he might go, he ended up signing a huge contract deal. He was given the armband based on kind of what he did towards the end of the season. And I can't just feel really based on the fact that he's not taken to the armband well. It doesn't sit with me well that he's got it. It's too heavy for him. He doesn't need it. Given the fact that the club itself has put so much faith in him by giving him that big contract versus what he's actually delivered this season and my expectations of such a good player, that for me is led to my decision to put him in as my most disappointing player this season.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's perfectly understandable. Dave, what about you? Who would be your most disappointing player?
Look, I suppose Rich Aubameyang will be the ideal candidate, but I suppose from what I don't know how, like, most disappointed, or I'm kind of most disappointed in the whole situation with Partey. I just don't think we didn't get to see anything about Partey that we expected to see or what we thought he'd give. You know, we got a snippet away again. I think we got a snippet again at Old Trafford, and then another snippet at Stamford Bridge a couple of weeks ago. But other than that, we haven't really, you know, his passing leaves a lot to be desired, you know. I felt for him in the Villarreal at home game. I think he was kind of left out to dry in that game, I suppose. But the injuries have been disappointing. But I just think the performances overall for what we expected and what we thought we'd get just haven't really lived up to expectation. But look, I don't have too much worries with him, where I suppose you might worry with Aubameyang a little bit. Can he find his form? I still do believe we'll see the best of Partey next season. So when we're doing this next year, we might be able to give him most improved. But at the moment, I think from, I suppose, a disappointing point of view, I would say, just from what we expected, I would say Partey.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. Yeah. What about you, Scott? Then who would you give most disappointing player to?
Yeah, so I'm split between the two. I'm glad Dave mentioned Partey because I was thinking, if he goes Aubameyang, I'm going to look really bad here. But you know, sometimes people think, you're a bit out there. But no, listen, absolutely bang on, Dave. Everything you said there about Partey was pretty much what I was going to say. If you're using the word disappointed, it has to be Partey for me. I am totally disappointed in Aubameyang. I really, really am. The only thing I will say with Aubameyang, and I suppose I haven't said this much actually. There may be some mitigating factors has gone on that maybe we're not aware of, and I don't know. You know, I know he had some personal issues. We know his mum was unwell and stuff, but I don't know if there's been a fallout with Arteta somewhere in the background. I don't know if there's more to it, but I'm not making excuses for him. He's been poor. He's been a letdown. I've been wanting to see Lacazette on the team sheet more than I have Aubameyang this season. I feel like Lacazette's brought more to the table. If Aubameyang don't score, he doesn't do anything. So he is solely relying on those goals. And he has been disappointing, but I'm going to go for Partey. And it's purely because of the word disappointing, because we did hype him up. We were so thinking like this is the. I mean, he was getting touted as a new Vieira after a couple of games, and I mean, I know that's what we do as fans. You know, we've been living off of scraps for so many years that when we get a player that other fans were jealous, other fans were calling him world class. When you get other fans and rival fans saying that, you know you're onto a player. So we really got hyped up. We were linked with him for a long time. It looked like it wasn't going to happen, and at the last minute we did it. And the guy can't shoot. I mean, I'm doing my watch-alongs, and I'm like this. I'm ducking all over the shot. The guy just doesn't. You know, every time I'm coming on the watch-alongs again, this is it. But Partey's going to go top bins, 35 yards, and he just hasn't found the net. I know he hit the bar the other day. And the Old Trafford game, Dave, you mentioned, which was probably arguably his game of the season. But he always looks a bit slow, lethargic on the ball. He just looks as though he hasn't adapted to the pace of the Premier League. But what I will say is that some people have said, well, it's the Premier League. Excuse me. You need time to adjust. I get that. But he hasn't really performed in the Europa League to levels that I'd expect. And when you're playing against the likes of Villarreal, which, quote unquote, that's his bread and butter. That's who he's been playing against for a number of years. If you're going to use the excuse of the Premier League, then why was he not dominating it in the Europa League? He wasn't. Perhaps it's the formation. Perhaps it's who's beside him or who's not. But again, there's too many times he's just not delivered. And like you said there, Dave, I hope that the next season he's not even mentioned in this conversation. I'm hoping that he's under big pressure from the fans' perspective to perform next year, and I think he will. I think he will be better. Whether he's going to reach the levels that we expected, I'm not so sure, but we'll see.
No. I mean, I think it's probably between those two. Paul just mentioned Willian from before, wage thief. I think that's probably about right. And Tracy says there, Les, do you think Willian was as bad as Ceballos? It's probably close, but I would say yes, he was worse than Ceballos in my opinion. I know what you guys probably must agree because we made him worst player of the year, so I suppose we did. Going to Gossip TV, hi guys, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're well. Terry says Defo Uber in terms of most disappointing in no two ways. Yeah, you'd have to say that. Paul agrees as well. Most disappointing was Aubameyang. And then there from the sideline talk says, just jumped off my channel straight onto this. Good to see my favourite Gooners on one screen. Yeah, shame you weren't available to pop on actually then. Much to come from Partey. Signs were there Sunday. Coming you Gunners. Basuma Partey will be interesting. No, it will. Exactly. I agree with that. That's going to be very interesting actually. And Gooner got to see you back on again. Great panel, guys. Keep up the good work. Yeah, and yourself. Yeah, your channel's doing really well as well. So, yeah, you keep up your good work as well. Fantastic stuff. Gary says, disappointing. Uber was healthy most of the season, underperformed. 15 goals dropped from last season from Uber in Premier League, and we'd had a difficult season. Partey was never healthy. I suppose that's true. He had a lot of injury issues, perhaps. Den says, disappointing has to be either Aubameyang, Partey or Willian. Anyone else is just an insult. 3 of the players we all expected to rely on and ended up being our worst 3 this year. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much right. And I would probably go with Aubameyang as most disappointing, probably ahead of Partey, just because like Dorsey said, I kind of had we all had high expectations for Aubameyang. His goal scoring record's been fantastic. The previous 2.5 years he's been there, and this season, for whatever reason, issues off the pitch. Yes, obviously there has been his health issues halfway through the season as well. So, but yeah, he has been disappointing, and I hope and pray that he's going to come back next year and he's got at least one more top quality season in him of goals. Let's hope he has, and if it's next season without Europe, hopefully he can score in a lot more goals in the Premier League, a lot more goals in the domestic cups, and hopefully he can bounce back. But I agree that Partey, we kind of would imagine he's going to come back stronger. It's his first season, he was adapting, had injuries, whereas Aubameyang, there is a question mark, isn't there? We're hoping he can bounce back, but there is more of a question mark over him because of his age now as well. And can he recapture it? I'm hoping he can. We want to see that smiley face, don't we? We want to see that back again. It's been missing this season, hasn't it, unfortunately? So, yeah, he would be the most disappointing one for me, just because maybe the expectations that we've kind of had of him. This could be quite an interesting one. What do we think of this one? So most improved, then it's difficult maybe because you look at it and how many players have actually improved this season. It's difficult, isn't it? There has maybe been one or two. If we start with you then, Scott, I know you're going to say this, so we'll put it up anyway.
Do you know what it is? There's some people that we've got we're going a few new viewers a couple of minutes ago, and they're probably coming in thinking like, "What's up with Scott? Like, why are they going to get the joke?" Yeah, Willock, yeah, definitely. Most improved player. Yeah, so you can tell I haven't done my homework here, can't you? You could go Smith Rowe, but I mean, is it he's improved, or is it just that he's now been given an opportunity? You could even give the likes. I'm just looking through the squad now. Someone like Elneny, you could give a shout. I mean, he hasn't done too bad this year. Quick scroll through here. Yeah. No, I'm going to play it safe, guys. I'm under the gun here. I'm going to go Smith Rowe.
Okay. I mean, yeah, he's definitely improved certainly in terms of the number of games he's played, and his output, has improved this season. So that's definitely.
Is there an obvious one I missed? I'm quickly scrolling through here.
Well, no, it's not an obvious one. It's just what everybody thinks, isn't it? Tracy in the chat, for example, said Chambers. Paul agrees with you, says Smith Rowe. Terry says Chambers as well. What about you then, Dave? What are you saying for most improved?
I'm going to say Pepe, Rich, for how he finished the season.
That's who I was thinking. That's the one I knew there was.
You should have done your homework.
Can I change?
You never done your homework.
That's actually who I meant.
Yeah, I think that is who I meant. He was kind of, I suppose, he did well in the Europa League with the chances he was given. Arteta seemed to continue to play Willian when Pepe should really have been getting the games, and then he had the red card. And he didn't let the red card kind of get him down. He really came back fighting from that, I felt, and then he kind of was doing okay. He got dropped for a little while again, and then he came back and he finished the season very well. So I think he improved when he went over to the left, and now that he was back on the right, he kind of continued to show that form, and he kind of showed the things that we expected from him and what we want to see from him. And I think we're kind of looking at going, he finished the season now, and we're kind of thinking, are we going to see the 72 million player next season? He's kind of given us a little bit of that. So he's kind of left in a position where I think if we were to go back, we probably wouldn't have been too disappointed if Pepe was to get sold in the summer. We kind of would have said, look, let's cut our losses. But I think we've seen things and signs now from what we saw from him to say, look, let's give him another go and let's give him the run of games and go from there. So I think from that point of view, I do think he's improved on his first season, and he's become a player maybe we can rely on next season. So I'll go with Pepe.
No, that's a pretty good shout, actually. I don't think you can argue too much with that. Tracy says there, Pepe came good when Chambers replaced Bellerin. That's an interesting point. Yeah, when he had maybe a better right back behind him, perhaps that might have been one of the factors. What about you then, Dorsey? Who'd be your most improved player of the season?
Pepe for me as well. I think, and the thing I think that I was most pleased to see was the disappointment after the Leeds game. I think plenty of players getting sent off like that. and he's not an old player. What is he? 24, 23, 24? Is he's not? He's not.
25, I think.
Say that again.
25.
Yeah. Okay. So I was pleased with his reaction in terms of how he bounced back from that, because with the way we are as a fan base, and the kind of the rubbish that gets put on social media, I think everybody jumped on that bandwagon pretty quickly after that game, and there was plenty of abuse out there for him. So to see him react like that and get his head down, he worked his way back into the team, and we've all seen what he's done over the recent weeks. I think he finished the season really, really strongly. So yeah, I think he was an obvious choice for me, but actually one that's come up a couple of times in the comments that I do want to give a mention to Callum Chambers, because when you look at the two right backs, you look at Bellerin and you look at Chambers, they both had very, very similar injuries, not too distant in time either, in terms of when they suffered them.
Yeah.
And when you look at how the difference in how those two players have bounced back from those injuries, it's night and day. I actually think Callum Chambers has been very, very good since he's come into the side, and for me, I think he's worthy of a mention as well. But Pepe for me.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think you're right about Chambers. You made a good point about the injury, actually, because he did come back a lot stronger than Bellerin did, and you said, a very similar injury at the same time. So yeah, that's maybe because Chambers never relied on his pace, did he, so much as Bellerin did? And obviously Bellerin's lost that little bit of pace, which has massively affected his game, whereas with Chambers, he never had much pace to start with, so he's able to adapt a bit more easier, maybe. I agree, he's come back well. But I would have to give it to probably the player that I've probably been the biggest critic of as well, and I feel as though he has improved this season. As the season's gone, he's got better and better. It is Nicolas Pepe for me.
Did my Pepe count, guys? I don't want to be the odd one out here. Did my Pepe get in?
No, you went with Willock, was it?
Huh?
Yeah, it was definitely Willock, yeah. It was definitely Willock.
I've never seen it come up.
Do you know what it is? I was just saying that. I was just seeing if my buttons are going to work. I was just going to click my button. Look, there he is. Look, Joe Willock.
Yeah, exactly. Willock, he's the one. But no, for me, it has to be Nicolas Pepe, just because of the fact that, even earlier on this season, I was a big critic of Pepe because I didn't feel he was offering enough. He didn't have enough end product. He wasn't direct enough. And as the season's progressed, he's got better and better and better until he's reached this level now. The last sort of 4 or 5 games of the season where he's reached, to me, this is the best he's played since he's been there, consistently now producing, some great goals at the end of the season as well. And let's hope this is a start for him next season. He can push on and really have a complete season like that, because that would be fun. I mean, 16 goals from a wide player. That sort of Robert Pires used to score them sort of numbers, didn't he? And players like that, and Brian Marwood and people like that in the past. These are sort of numbers that you need your wide players to be scoring. And he's done his job this season. I know a lot of the goals came late on, but he's got the numbers in. And he got more than Aubameyang this season. I mean, who would have thought that at the start of the season, that Pepe would outscore Aubameyang? You know what I mean? So
we think we were on a winner when we. If you said at the start of the season, we think we were on a winner. But can I just, I suppose, add to that, Rich? And I should have said it there on the pieces. I think, from an improved point of view, I think Jack is a lot more improved of a player than he was last season, than he is from now on into this season. I think he's kind of knows his role maybe that little bit better now, and he's kind of not. He's staying on his feet a lot more, Look, he still does have the 1 or 2 mistakes in him, but I don't think we see that rashness with him anymore, and he kind of has a good understanding of the system and what it requires, and I think he's a better player, and we needed him more, I suppose, this season than I think on previous seasons. So I think he deserves an honourable mention as well, for his season, because let's face it, he did have a good season overall, so.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I thought he had a good season. Yeah, you could probably say he has been the most improved, because the season before that, he had quite a lot of problems, didn't he, and stuff like that. So Paul says there the jury is out on Pepe. I'm not 100% he can do it in big games on a consistent basis. Yeah, I suppose that's still the question mark. It's very well, playing well in the games at the end of the season with no pressure on against teams that we should beat, and that's maybe true, but you know, I think he's improved all the way through the season. He's got better and better, and he's reached a good level at the end. Let's hope that he can continue that. And Tracy said David Luiz was a rock for us with the youngsters as well. No, he was, yeah. I wouldn't say he was improved, because I thought he was the same the year before. You know, he made a few mistakes, but you're going to get that. But I think he's been a steady player for us anyway, David Luiz. And yeah, you know, he has been great with the younger players as well. And that's definitely worth a mention for that then. Maybe moving away from players then, why don't we look at perhaps this? So the match of the season, there's probably only a few candidates really when you look at it. There hasn't been many memorable matches really, has there, this season? Unfortunately, not enough. Although we did actually win, I think, 30 games over the course of the season in all competitions, which actually is not that bad when you look at it that way. But which was the one that maybe stood out for you then, Dorsey, the match of the season for you?
I think I mentioned it a bit earlier on in the show that there is only not many to pick from really, but the two results against Chelsea, Spurs at home and United away, they were kind of the matches that have stood out to me. Having trying to pick one now, automatically you would assume that it would be beating Spurs. That would automatically be your highlight of the season. But actually, I'm going to go with the United win, and I'm basing that purely based on the fact that it's been such a long time since we've enjoyed any kind of success there, really, bar a couple of FA Cup wins. I know we beat them. With Danny Welbeck scored, for example, but that United away win, I thought was a really, I think Arteta tactically, I think he got it absolutely spot on that day. I thought Partey was brilliant in that game. I know obviously it was a penalty which turned out to be the goal, but I thought we deserved to win that game anyway. So for me, that was probably the one that I enjoyed the most, purely based on the fact that it's been a long time since I've been able to enjoy a win at Old Trafford. So the others I enjoyed just as much, especially the second result against Chelsea. But we played really well against Chelsea as well. But United away for me.
No, okay, you can't really argue too much with that one. Dave, what about you? What will be your match of the season?
I'm going to say the Chelsea at home, Rich. The Old Trafford one was huge for me as well. God, I love beating United. I think even, I suppose, coming from Ireland, not being kind of in London, being a whole part of it, I nearly prefer beating United than I do Spurs, to be honest. But I don't really know any Spurs fans, you know, as such. And most of my friends will be United fans as well. So it's kind of, that one is kind of the one you'd look out for. I look for United Arsenal first when the fixtures come out. But I think just the game at home against Chelsea, you know, we'd injuries, and we started Smith Rowe, Martinelli, and Saka, you know, and we'd Lacazette up front, and Mari came in and he started centre half with Holding as well, you know. We'd a kind of a makeshift team, and we didn't really know what to expect, and we went out really, and we played Chelsea after Park, and we could have won 5 or 6-1, you know, with the chances we had as well. So I think I just really enjoyed that game, to see kind of the youngsters go out there, you know, against Chelsea and just put in a performance and get away with the win, because we really needed that win at the time as well. And at least the kind of the youngsters went on and gave us that. The away game against Chelsea, I love a game like that as well, when your back's against the walls, you know, you're 1-0 up and you're defending for your life and you get out with a 1-0 win. I like those wins as much as any, but I think for the enjoyment and I suppose what it meant, you know, with the youngsters coming in, Chelsea at home would have been my favourite match of the season.
No, another good one, yeah, out of the amount of dross that we suffered, that certainly stood out. What about you, Scott? Which game would you maybe pick, if you just the best one for you?
Yeah, so I've gone with a different flavour, as I like to try. So this is one of the ones I did do a bit of homework on, because I was thinking, I was like, where was the good times? Like, what did I enjoy this season? And I was struggling. But actually, when I look back and I started going through them, and I started this channel up February, so it was a bit easier to remember the latter half of the season, because I remember doing the watch-alongs. And then the game I've come up with is the 3-2 win against Benfica in the Europa League. So if you're going to go on purely on merit and performance, perhaps this wasn't our best performance. It wasn't the getting over the hurdle of winning Old Trafford, the 1-0, to finally put that record to bed. It's always nice beating Spurs and Chelsea. But this game for me was more for, I'm giving it as I'm going for more like the drama side. Europa League, it was important to us at the time. I know it was the earlier rounds, but we still needed to progress. We were dominating play from what I remember. It ended up 1-1, and then Ceballos made a mistake. We went 2-1 down, and then we looked like we were in trouble. Excuse me, looked like we were in trouble. And then Tierney, like the captain that he should be, came good and just got up there, took a couple of men on, scored a goal, got us back into it. Come on, get back. And I think it was about the 87th minute. Saka put a worldie of a ball into the far post, and Aubameyang just couldn't miss. I picked that because I'm thinking back to the watch-alongs I've done since February, and I remember that was the one that, if you go back on my channel and look at my reactions, I think that was one of the ones where it really got me out of my seat, and I was jumping about. Honourable mentions from an exciting factor, the West Ham comeback. I know it was a poor performance, but football's not always about the performances, it's about the result. And I think if we'd won that game, if we'd won that 4-3, that would have been the winner for me. But yeah, no, like I say, the games you've already said, from a performance standpoint and from a getting one up on your rivals, yes. But from an excitement factor, that's why I've gone for that game.
No, it was certainly an exciting finish, wasn't it? I mean, we came back from 2-1 down, like I said, we was on our way out. Paul says there, Chelsea away, backs to the wall performance. That was obviously they're always enjoyable as well. Terry says the second half against West Ham, yeah, that was pretty much from about half an hour onwards actually. Tracy says there, Chelsea, United, Spurs, but Dundalk, yeah, obviously beating Dundalk must have been nice. Chelsea Xmas didn't expect the win exactly. No, I don't think any of us did actually. Terry says he can't think of a good 90 minutes. Difficult to find a good 90 minutes. Actually, you're right. There wasn't many overall good performances. We played well in spells in a lot of games, but not sort of consistently enough throughout. For me, then, I think the game that I'm going to go for actually, just because it was a very rare performance, I actually enjoyed watching us play. I thought we played some great football, and in what was at that particular time a really big game, I'm going to say the 4-0 win in Slavia Prague in the Europa League. Just because obviously it was an important game. We got us into the semi-final. Slavia Prague had knocked out Leicester, they'd knocked out Rangers. They didn't concede many goals, and we went there and ripped them apart. 3-0 up in about 25 minutes, whatever it was. Absolutely brilliant. We had a goal disallowed as well. We were absolutely all over them, and that was probably the best. Maybe that first half was probably the best half of football that we played all season. Actually, in what would have been a difficult game, I would expect. Game, and we went out there and won 4-0, and that was,
wasn't it? We played pretty well against Leeds until we conceded, didn't we?
Yeah, Leeds was one of the more exciting games, and even Leeds' comeback made it a little bit more exciting because suddenly we were a bit tense in the last 20 minutes, thinking they might have come back and got an equal, or got back to 4-3, and then who knows what might have happened after that. But I think of the Prague game, just because of how important it was, the quarter final with. Thought we'd blown it in the first leg. They were celebrating their late goal as though they'd won the cup. So to go over there and win 4-0, I thought that was showed a lot of character. That actually, Gary says their match of the season, Chelsea in December. Yeah, I mean that's got to be up there as well. The way that we should have won that 5-0. A good penalty save from Leno actually at the end as well, if you remember. An honourable mention. 10 minutes I think it was more than 10 minutes in Prague, Gary. I thought we played pretty well for a lot of that game, and then we were in control of it after we got the goals. Then says Chelsea win on Boxing Day. Yeah, that's obviously I'll say that's probably our best the league match of the season in the Premier League, that one. He says absolutely unreal performance like no other this season. Tottenham win was big, first since the Emery days. Yeah, it was. Yeah, good to beat Tottenham always. We were hanging on a bit at the end of that one, wasn't we? When they were down to 10 men, we hung on for the last 20, 50 minutes, but we got the job done. Like way at Chelsea, there's been a few of them performances where we've dug in actually and dug out a few results. And they're always enjoyable, aren't they? For those of us that remember the Jules Graham days when we used to do that on a regular basis, it's nice to see. When we do dig one out. So, yeah, they're all enjoyable as well. But I just think that the way we went over to Prague and demolished them 4-0, to me, that was impressive. So I'm gonna go with that. And maybe one that might be a little bit more difficult to nail one down. There's probably about 25 that we could name for worst match of the season. I'll start with you with this one. What would you say would be the worst match of the season? There's been a lot, obviously.
Yeah, it was difficult to pick one, so I didn't. I picked two. Two that kind of instantly, when I read the question, kind of two that really jumped out at me. The The first one was the 3-0 at home to Villa. That was just shocking from start to finish. It was a really, really poor performance, and if anything, we were lucky it was only 3. So that for me jumped to that was the first game that I thought of as soon as when I read that question. The second one that I couldn't really split between was just the Villarreal, the second leg at home, the 0-0. Just a really lackluster performance given the importance of that game and what was riding on it. The manager tactically got it all wrong in both of those games in the semi-final. And two very frustrating results. There was plenty that I could have picked from, but they were the two that kind of. I didn't do too much research on that one. I kind of went with my gut instinct on that one, and just the two games that kind of jumped out at me. So, those were the two that I couldn't separate.
It's probably just where you didn't do much research, or you've had a list of about 20 games would have come up.
I'd still be doing it now. I still wouldn't be able to narrow one down, would I?
No, there was too many. But I mean, those two were definitely up there as definitely two of the worst ones. What about you, Scott? What would you say was the worst match of the season?
Yeah, I mean, my first one that came to my head was the Aston Villa one. I was just scrolling through there to make sure I hadn't missed any, but you're just spoilt for choice. The Aston Villa one felt it was like a culmination of just utter poor form, and I remember going into that game fully expecting defeat, and I think that's what it was. I expected us to lose, and then I wasn't shocked at the. I was numb. I was very numb at that point in the season. I was like, "Yep, that's where we are. That's how things are." But actually, there's so many disappointing games for so many different reasons. The Leicester game, didn't we lose 1-0? I think Vardy just done what Vardy does. That was a kick in the bollocks. The Villarreal game, I mean, that will be the game you probably look back and remember in years to come because of the Emery factor. You know, if you have to look back on this season, that'll be the one that you remember. But special noteworthy mentions for the Wolves game, not just because of the result, but the way it happened. It was like we were just starting to find our momentum. We just felt like we were just starting to find our feet. And, the officials done us, some may disagree with me, but I don't think we got the rubber to green that day. I think we were very harshly done, dealt with that day. And because of our weak spine, because of our weak mentality, because of some argument, questionable decisions from the manager, it doesn't take much. It only takes a couple of poor decisions and we just collapse. And, after that, the form kind of derailed, and that was kind of the Wolves game felt like that was the final nail in the coffin for the league season for me. So they're the ones that stand out. But if I had to put it on paper, I'll go Aston Villa. But listen, it's tricky on that. It's really tricky.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, there's too much choice for that one. Which, as Den says in the chat there, he just says it's just annoying that there's more worse moments to go over than best. Hopefully that changes. Now, exactly, that is a big issue for the season. What about you then, Dave? What would be the worst one for you?
I'm going to go a small bit off what the boys had said, Rich, and the performance, and the one that I most annoyed about this season was the 3-0 at home to Liverpool. I just thought we were an absolute disgrace that night. I know Villa played us after Park that night. We were bad against Villa, but we were just so bad against Liverpool. I just couldn't figure out that game that night against Liverpool. What
was that after an international break, Dave? It was, wasn't it?
I think so, but we just kept playing it long for some reason. I felt like I supported Stoke that night. We just kept playing it long. Did we even have a shot that we didn't? I can't remember us even having a shot that night. Even now, I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed because Liverpool they were in shocking form as well. Let's be honest, and we made them look like the Liverpool they were last season. They came beat us 3-0 like we were Sheffield United and went away. They must have thought that was easy because that performance really annoyed me. Now I couldn't figure it out how abysmal it was. That the Villarreal as well, I suppose, for what it meant, it was a tough one to take as well because it was similar as well. I just feel like we didn't really give it a good go. There was games like that where you're just thinking what happened? We just feel like we didn't really kind of give it a go, or we kind of just went through the game and it was over. We lost and it was like that was it. It was over, But no, whatever it was about the Liverpool game, I just feel like that was the game that I was really most annoyed about.
Yeah, no, I don't think we can really argue too much with that. Den says there he's got a whole list of them: Burnley, Villa, Wolves, all up there. Villarreal second leg frustrating, no end product, as to lose exactly. Gary says Villa second leg, Villarreal multiple 1-0 losses where we set up goals for the opposition. Yeah, Burnley at home, for example, the own goal. Paul says their worst game, Villarreal at home. Tracy says good chat, Paul. Same one for me. That must be the Villa game. Villarreal, Southampton, Wolves, Villa, Burnley, Fulham, Villarreal second leg plus 10 more. Yeah, I think probably at least 10 more, at least.
It speaks volumes though, doesn't it? Because I genuinely forgot that, and I scanned through it and I skimmed past the Liverpool result because we always get spanked by Liverpool. So I was like, yeah, whatever. But actually, until Dave just spoke about it, I literally started bubbling up like, no, that is exactly right. I remember being furious about that night because we were just poor, absolutely poor. And it's just been so consistently poor on so many occasions. The fact that there's so many options this season just basically sums it all up, really, doesn't it? As Martin Tyler would say.
Exactly that. I mean, Den says about Liverpool is probably the most angry I've been. Absolute shambles over 90 minutes. But Wolves and Burnley have to be up there. So many. I mean, for me, just because of what it meant, would have to be Villarreal at home, just because we never turned up on that night and all we needed to do was score one goal. And we hardly mustered a shot on target, did we, the whole game? And just because of what that meant to be in the Europa League final, the opportunity to get into the Champions League, and we never turned up. For me, that was the worst I've felt this season after a game. Worse, we played worse than that. Liverpool definitely was worse. Villa at home, we played worse. Like it's been mentioned, there's probably at least 10 more games where we played worse than Villarreal at home. But just because of what it meant and how poor the performance was, that one would just kind of shade that for me. But on a slightly more positive note, Terry said they're going back to the most enjoyable. He said the most enjoyable last season was finding Richard and Scott's Arsenal channels. Well, there you go. Thanks, Terry. That's nice to hear. And yeah, well, hopefully we can keep. Hopefully next season on the pitch we'll maybe produce a few more memorable moments that we can look back on, rather than.
Rich, we're doing Channel of the Year. Is that the last? Is that the last award? Channel of the Year.
We'll have to maybe make one, won't we, for that? See who we're going to vote for on that one. That'd be quite good, won't it? And what haven't we done? I'm just looking through what we haven't done, actually. Let's have a look. And we've done that one. Why don't we go for this one? No, we're just coming on to that now. So we'll start with worst signing then, because there's probably more options for that one than there will be. So who would we say then was the worst? Obviously, we made a few signings throughout the season, some on loan, some permanents, and whatever. So Dorsey would be the worst signing this season.
It depends on whether we're classing it as in hindsight of what they've actually delivered over the course of the season. Yeah, because if that's the case, then it would have to be Willian again. But at the time, when we kind of made all the signings, I actually wasn't too keen on taking Dani Ceballos back, if I'm being completely honest. Didn't really show a great deal for me last season. Not enough reason, really. Looks good on the ball, but there's no end products, and I can't really put my finger on what kind of midfielder he is. So I wasn't overly pleased that we brought him back. But certainly in hindsight, yeah, what turned out to be the worst signing of the season was definitely Willian.
Yeah, I think they probably can't really argue too much with that. Dave, are you agreeing with that, or is there someone else maybe for you?
No, I'd say Willian. I suppose because what we expected, Runnerson kind of runs him close. No pun intended, but yeah, it's close. I suppose Willian and Runnerson would be close between the two, but I would say for what we expected, I'd give Willian the nod on that one.
I mean, all I would say is Willian, I know he's on a big contract, but he was free, whereas we actually paid money for Runnerson. So we need to maybe think about what that was all about. What about you, Scott? Who would be your worst signing of the season?
Well, I think it's obvious, isn't it?
Well, obviously, yeah.
No, listen, it has to be Willian or Runnerson. I think it has to be Willian. I think because he came with a bit of expectation. We didn't know who this Runarsson was. Anybody that said they knew who he was is just talking shit. None of us knew. Willian had a bit of expectation, Premier League experience. He's meant to come in as a senior player. He wasn't meant to play many minutes. He was meant to sort of come on as a, as of when needed player and help bring the youth through. And it's just every which way you look at it, it's been a disaster of a signing. And I know you're saying about the transfer fee, but we've made up for that in wages. I think I read the other day about 25 million so far, but how true that is, I don't know. Or it's going to be 25 million in the end. But Runarsson, low expectations because I didn't know who he was. So, yeah, William.
Yeah, I think we have to agree with that. Paul there says Willian as well. Terry says take your pick, really. And Tracy says Ceballos, Runarsson and Willian. Yeah, I mean, they are probably the three that would stand out. And Terry says, cheers, Scott. I thought you was going to
I was a signing.
Yeah. But no, I mean,
I've signed you, Terry. I don't know.
Maybe you have. That might be what's happening.
We got some sort of deal going that I don't know about.
But yeah, I'm going to say Willian as well, just because he was just generally dreadful. So, but yeah, Runarsson would be second. But like you said, no expectations of him. No one knew who he was. And if we never hear of him again, I'm sure we'll be quite happy. Why don't we look on a bit of a brighter now? Something that actually, this might be a little bit more difficult to pick actually, because there's a couple of maybe good options for this one. Not all our transfer dealings were that bad. We did do some okay deals as well. So who would we say was the best signing in Dorsey for you? Who was our best signing this season?
I actually think I struggled with this one more than I did any of the other questions. I really struggled with this one, and I went with Partey in the end because although he's come with huge expectations of what the player that we were kind of expecting to sign, I think in glimpses he's shown that. I fully take on board Dave and Scott's points earlier about maybe being the disappointment, but I guess that comes with the expectations of what you thought you were buying. But I kind of tried to take a little bit of a step back and think, well, first year in the country, he's got to adapt. He's in a new team, new surroundings, new culture. But what I did see that was good, I was incredibly impressed with, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of that going into next season. I did think about Odegaard, just because, again, what we saw from him when he was good, he was very, very good. But there wasn't enough game time for me to really kind of put him forward as a proper contender. But I thought from what I did see of him, I thought he was good. But yeah, I went with Partey. That I really struggled with that one just because there wasn't anybody that was great throughout the course of the season. But what Partey did well, I thought he was superb. So I went with Partey.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I think he's gonna prove to be a great signing for the club, isn't he? In the long term, if he didn't quite have his greatest, hopefully this is not his best season for us. Otherwise, we are in trouble. But I'm sure he won't be. I mean, Dave, what would you say our best signing? And there was a few that came in through the season.
I'd go Gabriel, Rich. I think what we've seen of him to start, and I think he'll prove to be a good centre half overall. He's good. He's big, strong, powerful, good in the air. Quick. His distribution on the ball has to get a little bit better. But I like what I've seen of Gabriel. He rarely gets outpaced. Even as we saw the game against Crystal Palace the other night. When Zaha broke through, he got back, won the ball off Zaha. And broke away. And that, the clowns that we've had before would have took Zaha down, give away a penalty, got a red card, and we lose 2-1. So. I like what I see of Gabriel. I think he struggled a little bit after the having the virus. So, but I think to the end of the season he looked good as well. I felt he always looked really, really good when he was beside Louise as well. I don't think you see Gabriel and Louise together and holding and married together. I think he's more suited to being with someone like Louise, where Louise can kind of do the playing out of the back, and he can just kind of concentrate on defending. So I think if he gets a good and a proper partner in beside him, I think we'll see him go on another level. But I think he's been our best centre half this season, and yeah, I like what I saw from him. I think he'd be my signing of the season.
I actually completely forgot about Gabriel. Otherwise, he probably would have been my choice. Skip right past it when I looked through the squad. That's a good shout.
No, I mean, I think maybe because Gabriel's better performances were maybe at the start of the season, wasn't they? So maybe he slipped off the radar a little bit. He hasn't played as much as he in the last 2 or 3 months of the season. What about you then, Scott? Who would be your signing of the season?
Joe Willock. No, we've got to stop that now. I'm going to go slightly different on this. Listen, Gabriel was very, very close to who I'm going to pick, but I'm going to put a name out there, and I'm expecting you all to disagree, which is fine. I'm going to go with a housewife favourite, Pablo Mari. Now I know he does have a lot of distractors, but he's a beautiful man. I mean, look at that beard, look at that hair. Often get, I look at it again. You can't look at that guy too much, can you? I mean, I don't go that way, but listen, if I did, that's the kind of guy that'd make you turn, wouldn't he? I mean, listen, jokes aside, there's a lot of women that are always posting about that guy, and I'm just like, okay, because anyway, let me get to the point. It's not because of his looks. I just think pound for pound, if he was just going to do it on pound for pound, I actually think he's not a bad little player. I feel as though, especially, it was a couple of mistakes there, here or there, but when he came in, I think he's done a job. I don't think he's as bad as some people say. I think he looks pretty. He looks pretty steadfast. I don't think that he's going to be a better player than Gabriel. I don't think he has the same ceiling. I think Gabriel's going to go higher, and I have no issues with giving it to Gabriel. But he'll probably win if you can do a best defender or whatever. He would most likely definitely win next season. But for me, I think just to mix it up here, because we've been agreeing on a lot of things. I'm going to go Pablo Mari. Just as I say, I just think when he comes in, he looks pretty solid. There's been a couple of mistakes. I don't feel as though he's had as many minutes as he should have done. David Luiz was obviously clearly Arteta's favoured centre back, and then obviously Rob Holding became the sort of the wingman. But obviously, outside of that, it was every combination but Gabriel and Pablo Mari, and I kept saying, well, what is the reason behind that? Is it because they're both left-footed? But what is it? 85% of people are right-footed anyway, so you always normally have two right-footed. But if you're a professional footballer, you need to be kicking the ball with both feet anyway. But I don't know. I don't know why we never really got to see that combination. And I would like to have seen it just purely out of interest. But yeah, that's where I'm going to go. So I'm just putting that out there. Pablo Mari.
No, that's not a bad shout. I mean, I know technically he joined on loan the season before, but we signed him permanently, obviously, this season. So yeah, he definitely. It does count because we did sign him permanently this year. I mean, yeah, obviously Gabriel had a great start to the season. He maybe struggled a little bit more in the second half of the season, but he's a decent. Obviously, Partey is going to be our best signing. But for me, I'm going to go with this little fella, Martin Ødegaard, just because I think he's given us something a little bit different, or he did when he was playing, that we maybe had been lacking. That little bit of creativity. I do love a good left-footed number 10 actually, and I think he did offer something different. And he scored that goal against Tottenham as well, which I'm sure we all loved, and he got an important goal away in Olympiacos as well. And I just think he just. I know he's only on loan, and we may never sign him permanently, but I enjoyed watching him play for us for the second half of the season. I think he was just as much a reason why our performances improved in the second half of the season as Smith Rowe. I mean, Smith Rowe had a great second half of the season as well, but I think Ødegaard coming in added that little bit of extra creativity that we'd been lacking before Christmas, and I think he was quite important. So I'm just going to sway with him.
Would you make him permanently, Rich? Would you sign, if you had the option, would you sign him?
If we can get the right deal, is he worth 50 million? Maybe not. I'm not sure. Although he's still quite young, so possibly. But we'd have to see what deal there was. I know there's talk of signing that OR again, and he's not had a great season. I think maybe Ødegaard might be a better bet than him. But then you've got Buendia as well, who's the other one that's mentioned, similar kind of position that he plays. So, but Ødegaard, he hit the ground running in the Premier League as well, which a lot of players find difficult. So I'd like to sign him if I wouldn't want to spend too much on him. Tracy says there the best signing was Gunnersaurus, of course. Yeah, when he got kicked out and came back again. So yeah, that's not a bad shout. Paul says Matt Ryan, actually, that's not a bad shout either, because he didn't play enough, but a good steady backup keeper. Terry there says Balogun, of course, he did sign his new contract, didn't he? for the season. Gary says, old player, the worst sign obviously would be Willian. The worst young player would be Runnison. Yeah, he's not that young. The worst loan in Ceballos, the worst loan out Saliba or Willock. Watching them perform away from Arsenal, yeah, they didn't, good for them.
Do you think it's interesting that we've all come up with a lot of them? Not obviously only us us four have come up with different names, but in the chat, have we come up with a lot of different names because there's no real standout obvious candidate, or is it that we've actually had a lot of good signings? I don't know. Yeah,
I think it's because nobody's really been outstanding, have they, generally? So everyone's been much of a muchness, and I think everybody's maybe got the players that they've preferred watching or they see potential in. Gary says their best signing Partey, because again, he says don't believe the improvement from midfield would have happened if he never showed what was possible. No, I agree. He certainly he made an impact, just not as big an impact as we all hoped. Tracy says the medic guy, I can't remember. I think his name's Bruno, but I think they've just got rid of him as well, actually.
Yeah,
clearly he wasn't that good a signing.
Harsh on him.
And Tony say, evening guys, evening Tony, thanks for tuning in. Terry says Odegaard was class when fit. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And PG Nez, you're in the wrong stream, PG Nez. That's on Scottish channel.
You know what? He comes in every day. He watches me a lot, but he always has to get that in. I'm just going to put the prices up. As I've told him, the prices are going up. So
that's on a different show, but all good fun, definitely for that one. The last kind of category, which I maybe should have called it something different, but I was going to maybe try to incorporate a few things into it. I've called it this, but we can kind of change. So I've gone with kind of moment of the season, but it could be goal of the season or just that one kind of moment that maybe made you briefly forget how terrible the season was in overall, really. Sort of one great moment, whether it's a goal, whether it was a player doing a certain thing on the pitch or a game. What would it be for you, Dorsey? What's your moment of the season?
I couldn't pick a moment. For me, the enjoyment that I've taken out of this season is watching the HLM boys. Just seeing them out there, just what they've done in the shirt. Saka, Smith Rowe, all those players, them two specifically, but them two in particular have given me more moments of joy this season than anything else. So for me, that was my moment of the season, getting them two in the side. Saka specifically, what he's done throughout the whole season is just phenomenal for a player of his age. And listen, everybody gets blown away with Phil Foden, and rightly so, because that kid is very, very special. But when you look at the players that the team that the two players have got around them, you couldn't be any more different. And what Saka's been able to do in that Arsenal team is just phenomenal. So just seeing them two and Smith Rowe coming into the team later on in the season and what he's done from kind of Christmas onwards has just been brilliant. So just watching them two grow into their shirts, grow into the team, and just become an integral part of the season. And just leading off the last point, because I know obviously I agree with you, Richard, about Odegaard. I would bring him in, but it has to be the right deal. I wouldn't be looking. Well, we're not going to have 200, 300, 400 million pounds to spend this summer. So blowing 50, 60 million on Odegaard is probably not the right thing to do, in my opinion. If we can get him at a good deal, I'd bring him in. But I also don't want to stunt Smith Rowe's growth. I know he can play out wide as part of a front three, and I know he kind of floats around. But for me, predominantly, he's a number 10. So I wouldn't want to see anybody coming in hamper that progress too much. We've all seen what he's done. So, yeah, my moment of the season is just seeing them two specifically just come into the team and just provide glimpses of joy throughout what was a really crappy season.
Yeah, no, I mean you're right with all of that. Really, I totally agree. They were a joy to watch most of the season. Actually, it was great that they grew up together. They're playing in the first team together, and it's been great to see those two develop. Actually, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come from both of them as well. Let's hope so, because that certainly seems to be the case, doesn't it? What about you, Dave? What would be your kind of moment of the season, or goal of the season, or whatever it might be?
I suppose, yeah, I've just thinking and looking at it, I was struggling. I suppose the win against Spurs, but then you could say, would that be my match of the season? So I think I'm going to kind of touch on what Ozzy was with the Halen boys. I think seeing Smith Rowe get the goal away at Stamford Bridge, seeing kind of one of the kids come up and getting a goal and a winner at Stamford Bridge, winning 1-0 away there. That's our first double we done over Chelsea in the league since it was at 03 or 04, something like that. So just, for how big of a goal it was, and I suppose putting it there for as well, that game meant something to Chelsea, whereas it probably didn't mean as a lot to us, but just to see, I suppose, usually if you're winning those games, you expect maybe if you win 1-0, it's Aubameyang or Lacazette that was going to get the goal, to see one of the youth products come out. And maybe for some, like a man as well, I watched Smith Rowe come up from the under-18s up into the 23s, and I've said it before, like I'd often be, when his Twitter wasn't as big, I'd often have sent tweets, and he'd have liked the tweets and stuff like that, so just I suppose when you're watching someone all along, and you see, and then you're seeing him, and then he goes away at Stamford Bridge, and scores the winner as well. That's kind of my moment of the season, I think, to see that,
Good shout. Good
Yeah,
shout.
no, it is a good shout. Yeah, that was a great moment, actually. Yeah, we'd all agree with that. What about you then, Scott? What would be your kind of moment that sticks out
if
for you?
You've been reading the chat, Tony already predicted. I was just going to say, the final whistle last weekend when it was done and dusted. That was what I was going to say. But no, on a more serious note,
when it finished.
Yeah. I was literally thinking it, and then Tony put the message in, and I was going to say, I knew he knows me from my stream. But listen, on a more serious note, I was gonna reference what I spoke about earlier, that winning goal that got us through against Benfica is like I say, it was a jump out of the chair moment. It was yes, we're through, and that was a big moment. But actually, I'm gonna steer the conversation out a slightly different tone. I know I have done quite a lot tonight. I'm gonna go the protest. The first big protest was the moment of the season for me. The reason I'll say that is because I was there, so I experienced it, but. It was, I know I went at the weekend and the weekend wasn't great and it was a bit of a washout, metaphorically and physically. It was actually pissing with rain. But actually, when I got to the Emirates, and I hadn't been up there for a long time, I got delayed and with trains. But when I got there, and I don't know how many thousand were there that day, maybe 5,000. Some people have said 3, some people have said 7. I don't know. There was a lot of people and there was so many banners. And do you know what? Other than the one guy that fell off of the thing, it was an accident. There was no trouble. I think one guy did throw a bottle at someone and then it didn't kick off. He just got ejected. But outside of that, it was just nice to see us all come together with a unified voice, which we've never done. We're always fighting with each other on social media, on these kind of streams, not necessarily on this channel, but I know on other channels it can get pretty heated and sometimes a bit disrespectful. And it was nice to, okay, it took the Super League to make it happen, but a lot of people that, maybe weren't quite as vocal or wasn't quite as passionate about the issue being the Cronkies have now decided, no, I'm done with that. And yes, some people have taken longer than others, but it was just nice to see that actually we can come together. Yes, in an ideal world, that would have happened at the weekend. And yes, it would have been better if there was 10,000 outside rather than inside. But it does show that, we can do it. We can come together. The rest of, throughout the summer and next season, we'll probably be talking about transfers. Then we'll be talking about Arteta and, people wanting to go, people wanting to have more time. All that stuff's going to sort of like dilute the energy. But for me, just getting there outside the stadium, seeing everybody, seeing all the banners, seeing everybody in good spirits, despite COVID, we're all taking health risks. And listen, I was a little bit concerned about COVID. I've been, inside for many months, and whether you believe it, whether you don't, whatever. At the end of the day, people were there for the passion of their club, and for me, it was a nice visual. It was a nice thing to see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was fantastic to see everybody coming together. Because it's been unusual for the Arsenal fan base. There's been so much divide, as you said, and it's good that everybody was able to come together on that one occasion. And maybe, it needs to happen a bit more maybe in the future. Let's hope it does. I mean, for me, the moment of the season for me was when Aubameyang scored against Fulham in the first game, because it put us top of the league for the only time this season. So it was all downhill from there. So that was probably the moment.
We played the opening game, didn't we? Is that why we were top?
Yeah, and we did win 3-0 that weekend. I think we were top at the end of that weekend as well, just because we'd won 3-0, and I think that was the biggest win over that weekend. But anyway, we were top at the time, so I quite enjoyed that. But it didn't last very long. So that was probably the moment I enjoyed the most, being top of the league, because it's not very often we can say that. Tracy says there, Martinelli's assist on his return from injury. That was a good moment. Yeah, it was actually. Just getting him back from injury was a good moment, to be fair. And obviously him setting up that goal. Terry says Martinelli brings hope and excitement. He certainly does. Paul says there, Saka in a Rocastle top. Yeah, that was a good moment, actually. Yeah, I remember the pictures of that. That was pretty good. Gary says, moment of the season, Lacaz's goal disallowed by VAR, then Vardy winning. VAR hates us. Yeah, well, it does, yeah. I wouldn't say that's a good moment, and is it really? But anyway, Tony says, another loan for Odegaard. Yeah, I think we definitely would say if we can't buy him. Josh Kroenke, Terry says there, Josh Kroenke said to be excited for next season. Perhaps they're selling to Eck. Well, maybe. We'll see. Gary there agrees with Dorsey. The positive moment, hailing boys succeeding and showing some players the way, especially Pepe. Well, Pepe got the hang of it in the end, didn't he? I suppose. PG Ned says there, the way going to Slavia Prague. Yeah, I mentioned that as my game of the season. I thought that was very good. Tracy, I think it's important to mention the Deadwood with the mole in the dressing room. Yeah, and definitely so. And Terry says, yeah, great shout, Scott. Yeah, with the protests and stuff. That's pretty good. Well, I mean, I think we've pretty much covered the season, really. Just before we go, I just wanted to give one more mark out of 10, because I think it's quite important for this dude.
Yes.
So
I thought you were leaving him out, Rich.
A mark out of 10. We can't leave him out, because he's been sort of pivotal to the whole season, really. Dorsey, what would you say Arteta's season out of 10? What would you give him?
I'm going to explain it before I give my actual number, unless we're going to do that the other way around, or do you just want a number?
No, explain it. No, explain it first. Yeah.
So I think the things, I was very much behind Arteta at the start of the season, and even after the disastrous run, I was kind of still thinking that maybe there was something there. I think for me, the frustrating points, some of the squad rotation that he's made, not just in different competitions. We've touched on it already with the team that he put out in the FA Cup, but generally speaking, I think Scott mentioned the stat earlier about the 37 different starting 11s. I mean, it's ridiculous. And actually, I read that stat myself. And the two games that all season we played the same starting 11 was Villa at home when we lost 3-0 and Man United away. I mean, what two contrasting performances to play the same team. It's ridiculous. So for me, the squad rotation is sometimes very unnecessary, and especially, and it's been the bane of my season, is the rotation of the centre backs. It doesn't make any sense to me. You build from the back, and the only way that you can do that is by having a solid partnership. And we've all grown up around the back four that we had. Luckily, earlier on probably at the start of my time that I really started following Arsenal. But I mean, that never got changed unless it was absolutely necessary. And the squad rotation with the centre backs has just been a real frustration to me all season. It's no wonder that he can't find a partnership, because they don't get more than 2 or 3 games together to kind of build anything. So that's been a real frustration for me. He's dropped players at the wrong time. I remember Pepe starting to play his way into form, and then he got dropped and left out for a couple of games, and you struggled to get back into your stride when you come back into the team. That for me was frustrating, where he's done that a couple of times. And especially when you've got players like Saka that need a rest, man. I mean, like, I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but going into the Euros now, after playing a season and a half back to back, straight into European Championships, and then going straight into another Premier League season, being arguably the most important player of our team. I just see what happened to Jack Wilshere, and I'm just concerned that I'm hoping that it's going to be different to that, because that would just kill me. That would be. And Willian, I just never got it. I can only assume that there was something in his contract where he had to play a certain amount of games or a certain amount of minutes. That can only be the only justifiable reason as to why he kept picking
Nudes.
him.
He's got nudes, I'm telling you.
There's no other valid reason because he offered absolutely nothing throughout the whole season at any given point. However, on the flip side and the positive note, I think there seems to be a pretty good squad morale. I think everybody throughout the course of the season, despite it being a really crappy season for everybody, when you see the pictures on the players' social media, they all seem to be getting on pretty well. There seems to be quite a good togetherness in some of the games that we've mentioned tonight where we've had to really grind out a result. You can see that in times this season, they have played for the manager. So there has to be something there for them to do that. If there was nothing there, then you wouldn't get those results. And just for me, the results that we've got against the bigger teams, the Chelseas, the Spurs, we've had some decent results this year, which in any other season would be something to really shout about. So for me, I've gone with a 6 out of 10. I've seen moments of Arteta that I think there is definitely something to kind of stick with and maybe give him a decent summer, his own pre-season. Listen, if we're sitting here in the same time next season, doing this in 12 months' time, and we're in the same position, then something's not right, and we've got to make a decision. But I think for me, I've seen glimpses of what he can maybe bring to us as a coach and as a manager to justify. Let's give him a normal 12 months and see what he can do, and then that way, he's got no excuses. He's got an opportunity now to bring his own players in, put his own stamp on it, have a full pre-season with the team, and then there's no excuses for me. If we're sitting there at Christmas in a similar position where we're 7th, 8th in the league, then you have to make a decision, and maybe that's the time. But I've seen some positive things, so for me, I've gone for a 6 out of 10 based on that.
Okay, a little bit higher than maybe I was thinking, but yeah, no, that's you've covered the points there, and you've kind of summed up why you've kind of scored him there, and I think that's fair enough, really. What about you, Dave? What would you give Arteta an overall for this season?
Look, I'd give him a 5, Rich. He's not without his flaws, but look, there has been good points we've seen as well. I suppose he came in off the back of last season into this season. As I said on the channel before, he hasn't really got time to kind of take a step back from it, and kind of gather his thoughts. So maybe the pre-season will do that. And as I say, I wouldn't give him next season either. That's too much to give him another full season. He really needs to hit the ground running as well next season. It's going to be on the line for him. But he's made some, he's had a lot of questionable decisions. He stuck with Willian over with Pepe, and then he hasn't played Martinelli. Martinelli scored, and he hasn't played him again. Even the other day, Martinelli scored probably the important goal against Crystal Palace, and he only got 5 minutes in the end against Brighton on Sunday. Questionable, I suppose. As we said, the back four. I'd like to have seen Gabriel and Mari, when Luiz was injured. I don't like kind of how he went away from that. The game again in the Europa League, it was crying out for Saka to play left back, and he played left back against West Brom the weekend after he should have played there into the Thursday night. So there's a lot of things he kind of needs to go back and look at and think, what was I doing basically, and I suppose just don't make those mistakes next season, because if he does, he's gone. And I'd give him to Christmas as well. Yeah, I've always said I'd give him to Christmas, and then after that, then I think if he hasn't improved, that's going to be the end for him. But I suppose with next season, it's a season that we're not going to be used to, and that we haven't really been used to. Myself, I'm 27, I can't remember not ever being in Europe, so that it's going to be weird, I suppose, going from Saturday to Saturday nearly with games as well. So he has to get it right in the Premier League next season. And if you come to Christmas, what's an acceptable position for him to be in? It's probably going to have to be top 4, really. Is it a couple of points off top 4? It can't be any further than that, So you can't be far away at Christmas and thinking, if he goes on a run, now we'll get in top 4. But I think, I suppose, when we're doing the review, I'd give him a 5 kind of basis of he's had good points, he's had low points, and then it's just, I suppose, about finding the happy medium now and using that to kick on next season.
I think that's a valid point, actually, Dave, with the lack of games that we're not going to be playing next season. Really, he's got no excuse. There's no excuse for squad rotation. He doesn't need to do it. You know, we can arguably, like Rich said earlier on, you can go all out for the Carabao Cup first half of the year. You know, FA Cup doesn't kick in until later on in the year. He's really got no excuses next year playing once a week. He can keep the team fresh. He can build a strong core, strong starting 11. And yeah, like you say, come Christmas, if we're not in the top 4 or very, very close to it, then for me, I think you need to maybe look elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much all agree with that. What about you then, Scott? What would you rate Arteta's season overall?
Right. Okay. First of all, guys, smash the likes up. I can see we're not on 20 yet. Make sure we get to 20 before we log off. Right. So I am far. I mean, you've been on my phone show loads of times, Rich, haven't you? And Dave, you've been on a couple of times, and we spoke about Arteta. I'm probably more of the I'm in the splinter brigade, really. I've been quite on the fence without trying to be on the fence. I've really seen, I've spoken to a lot of pro Arteta people, spoken to a lot of people every day on my stream. There's people come in who just want to come in and complain about Arteta. But here we are. I mean, I said I wanted to reserve judgment to the end of the season, or at least really digest it. I'll explain my thought process, and then I'll give my rating. So you guys, you've both made some absolutely really, really valid points. You know, I echo pretty much nearly everything you guys have said, really. You know, the squad rotation hasn't been correct, inconsistent lineups, inconsistent partnerships. The non-negotiables have suddenly dropped off the radar. The non-negotiables are basically, and again, he gets called PR Arteta, and I understand why people call him, but he doesn't help himself. And this guy, I want him to succeed because he's an Arsenal manager. I don't want him to succeed because I like him or him as a person. I don't see him as an Arsenal legend. The moment you go out there and you represent my club, you will have my backing. And he has had my backing, and I've supported him. And I'm not one of these people that is now saying I'm done with him, sack him tomorrow, it's finished. But I just feel like every step forward he takes, he's finding ways to take 2 steps backwards. And it's not always been his fault. I recognise he's been in a difficult situation. COVID, no. I take that off the table because that's impacted everybody. So I'm not having that as a reason. But what I will say, the contract situation with Ozil was very, very difficult. On a positive note, I think he handled that the best he could. I don't think that actually, I say he could handle the best he could. But there's always room for improvement, but it could have been a lot worse. He didn't lose the dressing room completely, and that is a positive, I will say. The players that we've got, they do still believe in Arteta. You know, even though it may not feel like it on the pitch sometimes, he hasn't quite lost the dressing room. So there's a positive. But when you look at how he's treated William, and like you say, you know, I've said all season it's either nudes or it's contracts, and it's in his contract. Jokes aside, he obviously hasn't got nude pictures, so it must be contract minutes. But you know, it just blows my mind that the treatment, the public outing of Pepe, yet Xhaka a week after, it was kind of under the radar. You know, both petulant, both were poor. And again, favoritism, bringing Pepe, taking Pepe off the pitch when he's, take minutes away from him when he's been playing pretty well. Lacazette would score a couple of goals and then find himself out of the team. And then if you fast forward more recent, I think his handling of the Super League situation has been really poor as well. Every opportunity he's blown smoke up the Kroenke's arse, and I just feel as though he's not read the fans right. He's not reading the mood. I do press conference reaction videos. We dissect it. I know some of you guys probably do similar. And you read some of the words and you think, come on, you could have been neutral there. Like it was an easy question with an easy answer. I get that you can't come out and slag off your employers. I understand that. I respect it. I wouldn't do it. But you can remain neutral. And he isn't. Every opportunity, he's really, he's basically looking like he's a puppet. And that was what my biggest fear was when we took Arteta on. I was fearsome that we've brought a guy in who is thankful. Like, thank you for giving me a job. Put the stabilisers on. Learning to be a manager in Arsenal Football Club. And that was my biggest fear. And then after he started speaking, Very well spoken at the beginning, said everything we wanted to hear. Well, he really sort of galvanised the fan base. But I feel for all them good words he said, and for all that good faith that he has been given, he has chipped away at it with all these things this season. And for me, I gave a 5 for the team. 6 being a kind of an average, okay. 5 being underachieving. When you look at where the season's gone and you add all these things up, you add up the fact that he absolutely killed us in that Europa League, the false 9 in the first leg. Listen, I get mistakes are made, that they are there to be made. He's a young manager. He's going to make mistakes. But don't try these things out in our biggest game of the season. It felt as though he tries to be a maverick. He tries to prove a point. He probably was on the phone to Pep the night before. Listen, you got any ideas? We joke about it, but they're very close. You don't know that conversations were had. But the reality is you just don't do that. You don't come up with new things like this in these big moments. So for me, it was going to be a 5, but I'm going to knock off an additional point purely for the fact that he really, really screwed us over in that Europa League. We should have got through. We shouldn't have made it difficult for the second leg. So I deduct a point purely for that. And because I'm a bit bitter with how he's been with the Kroenkes. So I'm going to go with 4.
Wow, 4. Okay, no, that's fair enough. I mean, I guess I think the way we finished the season in the Premier League with these 5 wins, and played a bit better, maybe with a bit less pressure on it. To me, it has tried to cover up a lot of the issues that's gone on throughout the whole season. Like you've all mentioned there, the constant mistakes that he's made with team selections, leaving the wrong players out at the wrong times, tactical stuff that just baffling, like that semi-final. And ultimately, when the pressure was on us this season, he's come up short. And unfortunately, that's why we've ended the season where we've ended it, empty-handed, not even in Europe, because when it mattered, we couldn't. He wasn't able to produce the right results, and he's responsible for the results on the pitch, isn't he? So, it's all very well winning your last 5 games against teams that, like us, didn't have a lot to play for and was cruising, and he won those games, and fair enough. But when it actually mattered, when it really, when we needed performances, he wasn't able to galvanise the team. And obviously the semi-final is the main one that will always stick out in our mind, won't it? So, I know Dorsey gave him a 6, which I thought Dorsey might give him a bit more, actually. So, maybe he's marked him down a little bit as well. I mean, Dave's gone with a 5, which I suppose is down the middle, and that's probably, a fair score. And Scott's gone with a 4. I could be harsh, really, and go lower than that, if I'm totally honest, because there's so many mistakes he's made. But I'm prepared to give him the benefit of the fact that he is new to the job. It's the first time he's had a job like this. And yes, I agree, he maybe is a little bit too grateful. He's a bit of a yes man. And I don't think the club are going to massively progress under his management, if I'm totally honest. I don't think that we can. And maybe he's going to get to the point at some point next season, before Christmas, maybe, where everybody else starts to realise that as well, and he has moved on. I'm hoping he can succeed. I'm hoping that, some of the positives that there has been positives this season, and I think he's got some things right and he's done some things well. He's handled the young players well in certain times. He's got more from Smith Rowe and from Saka. He's brought them on really well, but equally he's had a negative effect on maybe Martinelli, for example, and other players as well. So, if he can maybe, improve the things he's got next season, if he can, continue to get the best out of the players he's been getting and try to just handle the whole thing a little bit better, then maybe he'll be better. But I'm going to agree with Scott. I am going to go for a 4, just because I feel as though there's massive room for improvement, and he let us down in the big moment. And that semi-final will be a regret for him, I'm sure, more than anything else. But it's the one that's going to stick in our mind, isn't it? For the rest of the summer, probably. We've got a few kind of scores here. Paul's gone with a 4 as well. Tony C's gone with a 2. Well, that's quite harsh, but I understand why you feel like that. Gary's gone with a 5. Didn't learn from his mistakes. Yeah, that's pretty fair. Tracy says Arteta has a lot to deal with, things out of his control. He's had a terrible season, picking first 11 and subs he made 3. 3 for me should be gone. Yeah, a 3 from Tracy. That's again maybe quite harsh, but I understand it. PG Nez says Arteta in and Arteta out is a mute point now. Clock is ticking on him. He will succeed or fail and won't survive a poor start to next season. I think that's dead right. definitely. Paul says 100% rotation as centre half's madness. Yeah, I think we all agree with that. Ryan's gone with a 1 for Arteta. Well, that's quite harsh, but again, I totally understand that because he's definitely failed. Obviously, Scott said they're bang on PG Nez as always. Gary says Arteta is getting his training ground sessions in Premier. Well, he is, yeah. He's training as a manager and he's doing it in our club, which isn't ideal, is it? So he says, great show, Richard. Thanks, Dorsey and Dave, and I do love you really, Scott. Hit those likes and subscribe buttons. Well, yes, please subscribe if you haven't done so and like. And Tracy says, Dorsey, that's a nice tracky top. Yeah, I think we all appreciate Dorsey's tracky tops tonight, definitely. In the highlight of the season, actually, we're talking about what the moment of the season was. The moment of the season was the tracksuit top, definitely.
It's definitely the highlight of the season has been some of the merchandise that they've released. Yeah, definitely the highlight.
And Jonathan there says, very fair assessment, 4 must do better. Yeah, I think that's pretty much where it is, must do better. That's definitely where we will definitely have to rate Arteta, I think. And let's hope that he does do better because, it means that the club will be doing better next season. But I've still got my doubts and he needs a good start to the next season. There's no doubt about that. And if he gets it and he does well, then brilliant. We'll all be happy. But, let's hope he proves a few people wrong. That's all I can say. But I'm not convinced he's the man, but we'll see. Let's hope he turns it around. Well, I mean, we're sort of done there with the 2020-2021 season. Not the greatest season in Arsenal's history. One of the poorest, actually, that I can remember in 40-odd years that I've been going to Arsenal. So not the greatest season. But things that need to be learnt from it. And I'm sure that the people will learn from what's gone wrong. Hopefully we can all learn a few things as well from how we've maybe reacted to the season as well. I mean, me and Scott both got new channels that started this season, so that's been a positive. And Dave as well, of course, as well. You started your channel this season, and Dorsey's going to start his one next season, so maybe next season's going to be better because there'll be Dorsey on the game as well. That'll be good.
What I will say, Rich, is one of the positive things that I'm 37, right? So by the time I properly got into football and kind of really started following it with such a huge passion, we've been pretty successful throughout the whole of my lifetime. What this will do for me is if and when this poor cycle ends and we come out the other side of it and we start winning trophies again and start competing, for me, I will certainly appreciate that a lot more than maybe I've done previously, and maybe not take it for granted so much, expecting
Dorsey,
to win leagues.
You're the same age as me, give or take a few months, and I'm exactly like you. I was a teenager when we last won the league title, and if you said I was going to be pushing 40 and we wouldn't win another one, I wouldn't believe you. But you're exactly where I'm at with it. Like, sort of, when I was young, I didn't have necessarily much money to be able to go to much games. And now I'm at a point in my life where I have a bit more financial stability where I can invest and go to games a lot more. And I don't feel like I want to, like I did when I was younger, but going to completely value it if or when that time comes. You've got to enjoy it. Because that's the thing, is we get told you need to be patient and trust the process or whatever we want to mark it as. We're only here for so many years, guys. I don't want to end on a morbid note, but you only have so many years, and so it's all well and good. You're sort of thinking, oh well, eventually going to get there. Think of all those, Nottingham Forest fans. Look at Leeds fans been waiting to come up for so many years. There's no guarantees in football. There's a lot of other clubs with a lot more ambitious owners and a lot better setups than Arsenal Football Club, and we can live off of our history for so long. But what we have to do. What we've got to learn to do is we've got to learn to stick together more. Stop worrying about which is the better, who's got, which YouTube channel's got agendas against this and pushing it. Just support the club. We can disagree, but I think we can disagree respectfully. And if you struggle to do that, then just don't go on these social media platforms.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, for me, my message I want to take away, and that's why I use the protest as a key point. We can come together as a fan base, and we're not always going to agree, but we do have that. I've not personally physically met any of you guys, but as far as like internet friends go, if you want to call it such a thing, we can. You can. I've had a nice evening. We've been on for nearly 3 hours. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and that's what it's about. It's about coming together, even if it is through a camera.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, and that's for me the biggest positive this season. Actually, doesn't necessarily involve the team. It involves the stuff that we've been doing. I've met some great people like you guys, others as well. Melvin and all them sort of people. That's we've become a little community actually as part of and Arsenal's brought us together, hasn't it? And Arsenal's brought me a lot of people in my life that have come through from Arsenal. So and no matter whether the team are good or whether the team are bad, Arsenal will always be there, and it'll always have the ability to do that, and to bring people into your life that maybe enrich your life in some way, outside of the football side. And it's good to have that. And that's been the biggest positive for me this season, probably more than ever, because we haven't been able to go to games, and we've had to spend a lot of time indoors and stuff like that. And this has helped us all get through it, I think. And it's been great to meet all you guys and to be able to do stuff like this, and like you said, nearly 3 hours we've been rabbiting on about the season, and it's been fun, and it's been great to enjoy it and share it with you guys. Paul says there, he says sorry, that was Jonathan. He says, Scott, when you're rubbish, you start enjoying the small victories more. That's really true, actually. That is definitely a good point. You definitely do. And Jonathan says there, the one-off win v Man United or Chelsea means more rather than when you expect to win. No, it does. Yeah, it's more of you do enjoy it more, definitely. And Paul said there, he's 55 and he's seen worse seasons. Yeah, I mean, there probably has been worse seasons, but I don't think there's been a season I've enjoyed less. But that could be because we haven't been able to go to games, the VAR nonsense and everything else maybe on top. So I've probably enjoyed it. We probably have been worse, if I'm honest. When I think back to when I was younger, the early 80s weren't great. The football was terrible. We never used to win anything either. And maybe that was worse. But it didn't feel, I suppose when you're 14, 15-year-old, it doesn't feel as bad, does it? It's exciting more. Even when you're rubbish, it's more exciting. When you get to my age and, you've seen invincible teams and you've seen doubles and all that kind of stuff, it's maybe this feels worse than maybe the reality is. But, as you said, when like you said, Dawes, all your life you've known a successful Arsenal. So this is a new experience, isn't it? And I have experienced it. It's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the bar's been set for me. And that's it. So you consistently expect that bar to be there. But I mean, when you look at it and you take a step back and you kind of think about it sensibly, I mean, we've won 4 FA Cups in recent times. You could list off 10, 15 clubs in the Premier League that would love to have that as success, And I know we all like to take the piss out of Tottenham down the road, and listen, they've progressed as a club for sure, because they've come very, very close to winning trophies, but ultimately they failed at the last hurdle. But if you ask them if they'd want to swap positions with us, you can damn right that 99 out of 100 fans would in a heartbeat. But this is just the life of a football fan.
I mean, I think one of the things for me is, I said it on a Facebook group actually earlier, and there's a song from James called "Sit Down." There's a line in it that says, if I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. And that's kind of what it's like. When you've seen the highs that we've seen, it makes the bad times or the not so good times more difficult to deal with, because you've experienced some great times before. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of feel a bit like that, really. You want to get back to all those good times because you've enjoyed them, you know what they feel like, and you miss it more maybe, and it's harder to deal with. But ultimately, we're where we are, and hopefully we can enjoy another good time later on. Unfortunately, Dave's had to dash there. He's got some issue with his little kiddie, so he's had to quickly shoot off. But you can find his channel. It's Out and Out Gunners podcast on YouTube, so definitely check that out. He also appears on Anthony's channel, Republic of Arsenal, as well. So definitely check that out as well. Dorsey, then just where can people find you? I know you haven't got your channel going yet, but you will have soon, won't you?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of moving house, which is a shocking process to try and go through at this point in time. But once I've moved, I'm looking to kind of get it a designated spot, get something set up, and kind of hopefully, fingers crossed, have something set up for the start of next season. So that's the aim. I'd love to get my own channel up and running. But thanks for having me on, Rich. It's been really enjoyed it tonight. It's been good to meet Scott. Watched a few of your videos, Scott. It's been brilliant. So. Nice to be on with you as well. And yeah, just for me at the moment, it's just over on Twitter. So you can see my handle there. It's at Dorsey2801. So please don't be afraid to come and drop me a follow, come say hello. And yeah, we can mince over what's happened over the course of the season and look forward to the Euros and what to expect next year.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely check Dorsey out, without a shadow of a doubt. And Scott as well, obviously your channel going really well. Just give that a little plug as well.
Yeah, so guys, anybody that's in the chat, if you're not familiar, I run a channel called The Red Cannon. As you may have saw earlier on, we're a little bit different at The Red Cannon. I have some interactions. Recently spun up a virtual currency now. So you guys, when you come and watch my streams, for every minute you're watching, you'll gain this, we call them Cannon coins. And then you can exchange them for interaction perks. So Gary, who was in earlier, comes in every day and he gives me a punch. It's just a bit of fun, something that would make it a little bit different. But outside of all the gimmicks and the flashy colours, I'd like to think there's a bit more substance than just the graphics. I do try and get some good guests on. I've got a show set up tomorrow, which is going to be very similar theme to tonight. So, Richard, I apologise in advance, but I'm probably going to steal a lot of this format tonight. But there's only so much. There's only so many ways you can talk about a season, right? But yeah, no. If you haven't already subscribed, it'd be great for you to come across and check it out. And we're on the road to 1,000 inside sort of just over 3 months, 800 and something at the moment. So yeah, going very, very well. So thank you very much. But it's been great evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I always enjoy your company, Richard. Dorsey, I know we've communicated quite a lot on Twitter, but it's the first time we've done a live stream together, so hopefully it'll be the first of many. You're always welcome to come on my channel, mate, if you ever find yourself at a loose end. And if you need any help with the YouTube channel, getting stuck, I know you know what you're doing on the graphics side of things, but give me a shout out if you need any help with anything.
Really appreciate that, Scott. Thank you very much, mate.
No problems, mate.
Yeah, excellent. Definitely check out Scott's channel. It is great. And I say a little bit different stuff he goes on there. And you can punch him as well, which is even better. So we all enjoy that. So
I get set on fire. I get turned into a gangster, a Mexican. One of the better ones actually is the screen behind me. We have I put the chants up. So quite often people put the Utabia Guna up or the 49, whatever it may be. But yeah, it's all just a bit of fun, really, isn't it? It's just all about just trying to be a bit different. But
exactly.
Like I say, there is a serious side to the channel as well. So
yeah, that is great stuff as well. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so already. I know a lot of you guys in the chat have been in Scott's channel already, but if there's anyone watching that hasn't done, please do so. Just before you leave, just give this a like as well. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so as well. And check these guys out on social media. So I say that is the end. That's 2020, 2021 finished, over and done with. And let's forget that now and move forward. So I say we've got a summer now, the Euros, which England may well do quite well in if we're fortunate. Perhaps we got the wrong manager, but that's for another show. But hopefully we can do quite well in that. And then it's a good transfer window for Arsenal. Who knows? Maybe this time next year we'll be looking back on the 2021-22 season. You know, all have smiles and happy faces, looking at all the fantastic memories and all the trophies that we've won, which would be nice, wouldn't it? You never know. Let's hope that's the case. But I'm not quite sure it will be. But anyway, we'll see what happens. It's a couple of comments before we go. Shane says, "Thanks, great stream. Thanks for watching, Shane, as always." And Terry, well done, Richard, Scott, and Dorsey. Good luck with your move, and see you very soon. Yep, see you soon, Terry. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support. Thanks for everyone else. And I say that's the end of the season. That's the end of the podcast for this season. I will be doing some stuff through the summer, maybe some Euro stuff, looking at some players in Arsenal's history and do stuff like that as well. But there'll still be some stuff coming up. So stay tuned and subscribe. And of course, in the meantime, as always, before we go, come on, you Gunners, be better next season. Make it a better season. And we need to get that tracksuit back as well for the players, because that's cool.
Yeah.